Chapter 23:17. Yi Qinghan was very quiet, so quiet that Dong Wangxian couldn't find a topic to talk about. The danger from outside the carriage was getting closer and closer. Yi Qinghan couldn't help but take out the map and zoom in to find their location. If they continued to move forward, it would be a desolate desert with only a small amount of vegetation and water. We will reach the Middle God Desert in half a day. Aren't you going to hire more mercenaries? Yi Qinghan reminded. Dong Wangxian shook his head and said, if we hire too many people, it will cause people to doubt the importance of this mission. That's why we have so many people. This is the standard for a normal mission of the Eastern Empire. Yi Qinghan stared at Dong Wangxian and reminded him with a grunt, I feel danger. Perhaps it's the legendary sixth sense. It's very accurate. I advise you to ask your elders to hire another Xian immortal expert because I can feel a murderous intent following us from the border of the Western God Province. If it's for me, they would have left long ago. If it's not for me, then it's naturally for your mission. Dong Wangxian looked at Yi Qinghan in surprise. He wanted to stick his head out to take a look, but was stopped by Yi Qinghan. Don't stick your head out. I'm telling the truth. It's up to you to believe it or not. Although I don't know what your mission is, it must be very important. You should be careful. Yi Qinghan reminded him coldly. Dong Wangxian inexplicably believed Yi Qinghan. How could a weak mortal survive until now if he didn't have some ability? Dong dong dong. Dong Wangxian opened the carriage and said to the coachman, Elder Luo, inform my uncle to rest when we reach Immortal Peach City. I have something to discuss with him. Okay. A low voice came from outside the carriage, and the carriage slowly came to a stop. Dong Wangxian quickly closed the window and looked at Yi Qinghan seriously. He whispered, This mission is to protect. Forget it. Can I trust you? Yi Qinghan shook his head and said indifferently, I'm not interested in your mission, nor do I want to get involved. I'm only reminding you to thank you for saving my life. Dong Wangxian curled his lips and was really unhappy. Yi Qinghan fell into silence once again. He closed his eyes and rested his mind. His soul was in an extremely relaxed state, drifting between the high-level immortal earth immortal realm and the immortal heaven immortal realm. However, to break through to the immortal heaven immortal realm required a certain amount of accumulation and luck. About 2 hours later, the caravan stopped. Yi Qinghan was startled awake. The Dong Wang immortal said in a low voice, You hide in the carriage later. I will discuss with Uncle about hiring another mystic immortal realm expert. However, we might not be able to hire such an expert. Yi Qinghan hesitated and said worriedly, Then I will be exposed at any time. Moreover, I'm not sure if the people following your caravan are Wu Chuan and the rest. If you leave and they forcefully open the caravan, wouldn't I be exposed? Dong Wangxian was a little embarrassed. He continued to let Yi Qinghan hide in his arms. If he was exposed, he could forget about keeping his face. Yi Qinghan was also a little helpless. This time, if he wasn't careful, he would be done for. He didn't dare to let his guard down. I don't care. Anyway, you've seen my naked body. You have to take responsibility. If you dare to abandon me, I will definitely cripple you. Dong Wangxian's attitude suddenly changed. She looked at Yi Qinghan with determination. She opened her clothes and signaled to Yi Qinghan to hide in her arms. Yi Qinghan smiled bitterly and said, Princess, you should restrain your thoughts. I have offended the Extreme Peak Mountain. That is an organization that even the immortal empires don't want to offend. I don't want to implicate the East Imperial clan. Moreover, the East Imperial clan will not allow you to be involved with me. I can't even protect myself now, let alone your safety. Therefore, I would rather leave now than agree to your request. I yearn for an adventurous life. You can bring me along on an adventure. Dong Wangxian snorted. Yi Qinghan rolled his eyes. A rich girl was indeed a rich girl. Only a lunatic would want to live such a life as a fugitive. Scram. If the enemy this time is targeting your East Imperial clan's caravan, you will understand how difficult it is to live such a life as a fugitive. Yi Qinghan said unhappily. Dong dong dong. At this moment, there was a hurried knocking sound outside the carriage. Hua. Yi Qinghan quickly turned his soul into a ball of energy and hid in Dong Wangxian's arms. When his soul touched that snow-white soft flesh, Dong Wangxian's body trembled. Yi Qinghan's soul trembled as well. However, this was not the first time. He quickly retracted his soul fluctuation. Dong Wangxian quickly sprinkled some herbs in the carriage and applied some spices on her body. She hoped to cover Yi Qinghan's aura. Creak. Dong Wangxian opened the carriage door. Dong Wang Luoxian was standing outside. In front of the caravan was a majestic city. It was filled with vicissitudes and ancient charm. Immortal Peach City was the only city near the Middle God Desert. There were adventurers everywhere. However, most of them were immortal Earth immortals. There were very few immortal Heaven immortals and even fewer immortal Xian immortals. Xian, why are you suddenly moving forward? After passing through this desert, we will reach the center of the Center God province. It is much safer there. Dong Wang Luoxian frowned and asked. Dong Wangxian pretended to be calm. She tidied her clothes and said respectfully, "This Middle God Desert is the most dangerous place. Many major forces have met with mishaps here. Therefore, I have decided to rest in the city for a night and let everyone adjust their condition before moving out." Dong Wang Luoxian hesitated for a moment. He did not have the intention to refute Dong Wangxian. After all, the leader of the caravan was Dong Wangxian. The Dong Wang family was only giving Dong Wangxian a test of adulthood. He was also using her as a cover so that no one would think that this mission was too important. Then let's rest in the city for a day. Dong Wang Luoxian said indifferently. Dong Wang Luoxian led the caravan into the city. The guards were tactful and did not make things difficult for the caravan. There were many people in the city. The people on the streets all made way for the caravan. Dong Wang Luoxian was quite familiar with this place. He went straight to a large inn and booked it. After making the arrangements, Dong Wangxian placed Yi Qinghan in his room before coming to Dong Wang Luoxian's room. "Uncle, I have a bad premonition. I hope that we can hire a mystic immortal realm expert to escort us back to the Central God Province. I hope that you can support us." Dong Wangxian closed the door and spoke softly. Dong Wang Luoxian smiled and said lovingly, "Xian, this is your first time coming out to temper yourself. It's good that you have a sense of danger. I'm very gratified. However, this time around, we are not tempering ourselves but protecting the ancestral treasure of the Dong Wang clan. We are doing this to prevent others from suspecting us. That's why we are keeping such a low profile and only using the standard escorts to escort us back. In fact, our true purpose is to escort the Dong Wang Immortal Bell. If you hire a mystic immortal realm expert to escort us along the way, there would definitely be people eyeing us. If something happens to the Dong Wang Immortal Bell, let alone you, even this old man wouldn't be able to account for it." Dong Wangxian was extremely confident in Yi Qinghan's words. If the ancestral treasure was targeted by others, with just Dong Wang Luoxian being a mystic immortal, he would definitely not be able to protect the ancestral treasure. Chapter 23:18. Within Dong Wang Luoxian's room, Dong Wang Immortal insisted on hiring another Xian Immortal expert. Xian Immortal mercenaries were the real deal. They had been fighting outside all year round and had terrifying combat strength. Such a Xian Immortal could change a lot. "Why are you so insistent on hiring another Xian Immortal?" Dong Wang Luoxian asked curiously. Dong Wang Immortal had already thought of an excuse. She said solemnly, "Uncle, a woman's sixth sense is very accurate. I feel that someone is watching us and will make a move in the desert. Ha ha ha, Dongwang Luoxian laughed. He reached out and patted Dongwang Immortal's head like he was looking at his own daughter. Xiener, why didn't I notice that you are so funny? If someone is really following us, why didn't I notice? Dongwang Luoxian teased. Dongwang Immortal's face turned red. She stomped her feet and said coquettishly, Uncle, how can you not believe me? It is better to be safe than sorry. 200,000 immortal coins is enough for a Xian immortal to escort us out of the great god desert. This matter involves my clan's ancestral artifact. I am also worried that something might happen to it. Dongwang Luoxian smiled bitterly. He had no choice but to settle for the next best thing. He said, The ancestral artifact is with you. If someone really has designs on the ancestral artifact, I will bring you out first. Don't worry, unless it is a Xian immortal expert or a golden immortal, no one will be able to stop me. Dongwang Luoxian was almost in the middle stage of the Xian immortal stage. He was also the inheritor of an ancient clan. Naturally, he had the confidence to say such words. Dongwang Immortal was convinced. Dongwang Luoxian's words were reasonable. If they were to hire a Xian immortal expert, it would definitely attract the attention of others. AI. Dongwang Immortal sighed. She bowed and left. After returning to her room, she looked at Yi Qinghan helplessly. Yi Qinghan already guessed the result. Dongwang Luoxian didn't agree to hire a Xian immortal. However, the sense of danger didn't disappear. No matter if it was for himself or for the mission on Dongwang Immortal, he had to come up with a perfect plan. I will turn into energy and you will bring me out. I will use your name to hire a Xian immortal to follow behind the caravan. It doesn't matter if it is useful or not. It is safer to be prepared. Yi Qinghan said firmly. Dongwang Luoxian's eyes lit up. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan transformed into a ball of golden energy, almost sticking to her chest. Dongwang Immortal felt uncomfortable all over. She kept wriggling her chest. That kind of numb feeling made her feel embarrassed and happy at the same time. Don't move recklessly. Yi Qinghan transmitted a wave of soul energy and said indifferently. Dongwang Xian's seductive face revealed an awkward smile. He pushed open the door and left the room. Just as he left the hall, he was stopped by a mercenary leader. Princess, where are you going? The leader of this group of mercenaries was a high-level heavenly immortal expert. He appeared to be in his 40s, and he was burly and powerful. His combat prowess was definitely not any weaker than Yi Qinghan's. In fact, he was quite a bit stronger than Yi Qinghan. After all, he had a fleshly body, a powerful immortal artifact, a defensive immortal artifact, and an offensive immortal artifact. Commander Zhao Lei, I want to take a stroll around the city. Can you bring a few men with you to accompany me? Dongwang Xian said with a smile. It was normal for a little girl to like to play and stroll around the streets. Zhao Lei did not suspect anything. He nodded and said to the 5 or 6 burly men and young men on the table behind him, The 5 of you, follow me to take a stroll around the city. All right. The 5 heavenly immortal experts immediately stood up excitedly. It was an honor to be able to accompany the princess to stroll around the street. Dongwang Xian's clothes were very conservative, but it made her look even more noble and beautiful. She quickly left the inn under the escort of Zhao Lei and the rest. In a room above the inn, Dongwang Luoxian looked at Dongwang Xian's departing figure. His brows furrowed, but he did not stop her. Sigh, this lass. I don't know what's wrong with her. If she was really targeted along the way, they would have already taken action. Why wait until the last moment to take action against us? Dongwang Luoxian said with a bitter smile. Dongwang Xian and the rest strolled around the street. It seemed like they did not have a target, but Dongwang Xian kept on walking towards the employment market. There was an employment market in every big city. There were countless mercenaries in the immortal world. They formed a mercenary organization. Every city had a mercenary hall with a Xian immortal overseeing it. There were 5 headquarters located in the imperial capital of the 5 great immortal empires, and there were golden immortals overseeing it. Every real mercenary in the world had registered at the mercenary hall. Only such mercenaries were real mercenaries and would be recognized by their client. Once they accepted a mission, they could not go back on their word. Otherwise, the mercenary hall would personally clean them up. Every time a mercenary accepted a mission, the mercenary organization would get 30% of the profit. This was to maintain the operation of the mercenary organization and also to show respect to the immortal golden immortal. With the protection of the immortal golden immortal, not many powers would dare to offend a mercenary. Unless it was some roaming bandits, they did not have a fixed residence and dared to offend anyone. For example, people like Yi Qinghan. Soon, Dong Wangxian arrived at the mercenary hall in the immortal Peach City. Zhao Lei asked curiously, "Princess, why are you here? Could it be that you still want to hire some people? This old man has a trustworthy brother that I can introduce to you." Dong Wangxian laughed and said, "No need, I'm just here to visit the mercenary hall head, Mr. Situ. He is a friend of my father. Since I'm here, I should pay him a visit." Situ Hao, the hall head of the mercenary hall in the immortal Peach City. He was at the initial stage of the Xian immortal stage, but his combat strength was not to be underestimated. He had fought countless battles in his life, and won more than he lost. Ordinary clans and small sect heads were not his match. "You guys wait for me here. I'll go in for a while and come out." Dong Wangxian smiled and said. The mercenary hall was still safe. No one would dare to cause trouble in the mercenary hall unless they were courting death. Back then, there was an immortal country's master Bei Lu who used his status to cause trouble in the mercenary hall of a big city. He was slapped dozens of times in front of the king and was hung on the city wall for 3 days. The king was unable to save him. In the end, because the crown prince was alerted, the crown prince personally went to the mercenary headquarters to beg for help from the golden immortal boss. Dong Wangxian constantly sprinkled perfume into her clothes. The fragrance from her body assaulted the nostrils. Yi Qinghan almost choked to death, but in order to hide from the nose and spiritual sense of the Xian immortal, he could only bear with it. A heavenly immortal manager saw the Xian immortal and hurried over. Even though he didn't know her, the people of the mercenary group would never look down on others. This was the quality of the mercenary group. Dong Wangxian took out a token from her waist and passed it to the manager. She said indifferently, "Take this to your hall head, Mr. Situ." That heavenly immortal expert was shocked. But looking at the token, he knew that Dong Wangxian was a big customer. He hurriedly bowed and took the token. Not long later, that heavenly immortal manager ran over and respectfully returned the token to Dong Wangxian. He bowed and said, "Hall head invites you in." Dong Wangxian followed this heavenly immortal expert up the building and went straight to the backyard of the mercenary hall. There was an old man with white hair and a youthful face. His aura was restrained and he looked like an ordinary old man. He didn't put on any airs at all. He waved his hand to dismiss the heavenly immortal expert and smiled. "So it's the princess. This old man didn't go out to greet you." Dong Wangxian didn't dare to put on airs. She bowed like a junior and said respectfully, "Dong Wangxian came uninvited. I hope Hall Head Situ can forgive me. Your uncle didn't come and actually asked you to come. Could it be that you're here to visit this old man? Then this old man would have a lot of face." Situ Hao was full of smiles. He did know Dong Wangxian's father, but that was only business. He didn't think that he could be friends with the Dong Wangxian. Chapter 23:19. Although Situ Hao was powerful, he was also very low-key. Although his position was not as high as the Dong Huang clan's Xian immortal, they belonged to different organizations and powers. Even if they could make friends, it would not be considered a social climb. Dong Huang Xian naturally would not be arrogant. She bowed and said, "Senior Situ is too kind. My father specially mentioned you when I came out to train. If I pass by, I will definitely come and visit. So even if Xian doesn't have a mission, I will still come and visit." Ha ha! Brother Dong Huang really gives this old man face. To let your favorite daughter come and visit, this old man is very happy. But niece, you definitely didn't come just to visit me, right? Situ Hao smiled and asked. Dong Huang Xian replied respectfully, "Senior Situ, although I'm training this time, I also have a mission. Because it's my first time out, I'm always a bit nervous and not confident enough. So I want to hire Senior to personally escort Xian. You just need to follow behind the convoy from afar. When Xian Er's convoy leaves the Middle God Desert, the mission will be considered complete. I wonder if Senior has the time to accept this mission?" Situ Hao raised his eyebrows and was a bit surprised. Dong Huang Luo Xian personally escorted the convoy. Could it be that he could not protect a little girl? "Princess Xian, you think some Xian immortal will attack you? Then why doesn't Luo Xian personally hire you?" Situ Hao asked. Dong Huang Xian scratched her head and smiled. "Big uncle feels that no one will attack me, so he doesn't want to trouble you. But I'm scared. Senior, please do it yourself. In less than 5 days, we'll leave the Middle God Desert and you can come back." Not many people could resist a girl like Dong Huang Xian acting coquettishly, especially Xian immortals. They felt that this girl was their own daughter and could not bear to reject her. Situ Hao smiled and sat on the armchair and closed his eyes to think. It was not impossible for a city's mercenary hall head to go out on a mission. If it was a large mission, it would take too long and the headquarters would send someone over for a period of time. It was only 5 days, and the return time would be even longer. In total, it would only take 7 or 8 days. The city should be fine. After thinking for a while, he nodded happily and said, "All right, for the sake of your father, I will agree. However, friendship is friendship, but the mercenary fees cannot be low." Dong Huang Xian was overjoyed. He hurriedly said respectfully, "Thank you, Senior. Junior is very sorry to trouble you. How could I not pay you the mercenary fee? I just wonder how much your mercenary fee is?" Situ Hao stretched out 4 fingers and said, "Xian immortal level mercenaries, 40,000 celestial coins a day. This is the market price, I can't reduce it. 5 days, 200,000 immortal coins. It was indeed a sky-high price. However, for the people from the major forces, some missions were worth more than 200,000 immortal coins. For example, Dong Huang Xian's life. Situ Hao didn't think too much about it. He thought that Dong Huang Xian didn't have enough confidence in himself, which was why he went against Luo Xian's will to hire him. Dong Huang Xian was willing to part with 200,000 immortal coins. He casually took out 200,000 immortal coins from his immortal ring. After handing it over to Situ Hao, he said respectfully, "Senior, Xian will not disturb you. We will leave tomorrow morning. Don't follow too closely. We can return after we leave the Great God Desert." Situ Hao nodded and smiled. "When you go back, remember to send my regards to your father. Junior understands." Dong Huang Xian bowed and left. Situ Hao looked at Dong Huang Xian's departing figure and frowned. He said to himself, "Why do I feel that there is another person's aura on this girl? Could I have sensed wrongly?" Dong Huang Xian's body fragrance was too strong. Her body fragrance and spices completely covered Yi Qinghan's aura. However, Situ Hao was so close to Yi Qinghan. No matter how well Yi Qinghan hid himself, he was still detected. Dong Huang Xian left the mercenary hall and let out a long sigh. He subconsciously hugged his chest and jogged back to the inn with Zhao Lei and the other mercenaries. Even after leaving the mercenary hall, Yi Qinghan didn't relax. After all, there were still a few heavenly immortal experts by Dongwang Xian's side. This group of people weren't to be trifled with. If he wasn't careful, he would be exposed. After returning to Dongwang Xian's room, Yi Qinghan heaved a sigh of relief. He transformed into his fleshly body and appeared in front of Dongwang Xian. Yi Qinghan relaxed slightly. However, that sense of danger didn't weaken. The more it was like this, the more he couldn't be sure if this danger came from him or from Dongwang Xian's mission. If he wasn't sure, he didn't dare to leave Dongwang Xian alone. If Wu Chuan and the other Xian immortals were still watching the convoy, leaving the convoy would be courting death. Now I'm relieved. Sidu Hao's strength is almost comparable to my uncle's. 2 Xian immortals working together is equivalent to 4 ordinary low-level Xian immortals. No one would dare to send 4 or 5 Xian immortals to deal with my convoy. Dongwang Immortal said confidently. Yi Qinghan smiled silently. He sat in his room and cultivated silently. The Dongwang Immortal had provided him with a lot of resources and soul-type pills, allowing his cultivation to advance by leaps and bounds. Originally, he would have needed more than 10 years or even decades to break through to the Heaven Immortal stage, but now, he could break through at any time. The fluttering between the two realms made him feel very helpless, as he was unable to forcefully step into the early stage of the deathless heavenly immortal realm. However, Yi Qinghan was very confident. Once he stepped into the early stage of the deathless heaven immortal realm, his strength would undergo a qualitative leap. It would be very difficult for him to meet any opponents below the heaven immortal realm. Even Chu Zhongxuan and the other 2 would not be able to shake him. The difference between a sky immortal and a mystic immortal was too great. When he was a spirit immortal, he could kill an earth immortal. When he was an earth immortal, he could destroy an immortal sky immortal. However, when he was an immortal sky immortal, he could only defeat many immortal sky immortals. He was still very weak against a mystic immortal. Without a physical body, the restraints are too strong. Yi Qinghan sighed secretly and clenched his fist. There were many things that he was helpless about. If he had a physical body now, and refined it to the deathless heaven immortal realm, so what if Wu Chuan came personally? Even if he could not defeat Wu Chuan would not be able to kill him. At most, both of them would suffer. Yi Qinghan had many things that he did not understand. After thinking for a long time, he opened his eyes and looked at the Dongwang Immortal. He found that she was also staring at him. He could not help but smile bitterly and ask, "Princess Xian'er, I wonder if the Dongwang lineage knows how an immortal sky immortal in soul state can reconstruct a physical body?" The Dongwang Immortal was immediately energized. In this aspect, she knew much more than Yi Qinghan. If you protected your physical body when you were an immortal spirit immortal and cultivated until you became an immortal sky immortal, even if your physical body was destroyed, as long as you found the right resources, you could reconstruct your golden body. However, you gave up your physical body at the beginning. Only when you become an immortal golden immortal can you reconstruct your golden body. If you did not give up your physical body at the beginning, it would be almost impossible for you to reach the golden immortal realm. The Dongwang Immortal explained. Yi Qinghan smiled bitterly and muttered to himself, "Is there no other way?" "There is. If you can ask the Dragon Emperor for help, reconstructing your golden body will not be difficult," the Dongwang Immortal said with a smile. Yi Qinghan rolled his eyes at the Dongwang Immortal. If he could ask the immortal Dragon Emperor for help, would the ultimate peak mountain dare to hunt him down? Chapter 23:20. Dongwang Immortal's words cut off Yi Qinghan's thought. He could only give up on the golden body for now. However, Dongwang Immortal thought for a long time before scratching his head and saying, "I seem to remember a book at home that recorded the process of an immortal heaven immortal's soul forming a golden body. He almost succeeded but failed at the last step. Otherwise, his achievements would be limitless. Yi Qinghan's eyes flashed. He grabbed Dong Wang Immortal's shoulder and asked with a trembling voice, "Can you take it out for me to see?" Dong Wang Immortal shook his head and replied, "That book is called. It's called The Records of Ancient and Modern History. It's in the East Royal Family's library and not with me unless you follow me back. However, it won't work if you hide it with me. If someone finds out, not only will I lose face, you will also lose your life." Hiss. Yi Qinghan took a deep breath. He couldn't wait, but this matter couldn't be rushed. Seems like my first stop can't be the Ancient Emperor Academy. Yi Qinghan's eyes flashed as he thought about how to sneak into the East Royal Family. Dong Wang Immortal leaned on the bed and looked at Yi Qinghan. She also wanted to help him reconstruct his golden body, but that book couldn't be taken out. She could only read it in the library. She flipped through it out of curiosity. The process of that immortal heaven immortal's golden body was very complicated. She didn't remember it at all, so she couldn't remember it now. "I'm going to rest. If you're tired, you should rest too. You said that the journey in the desert could be very dangerous," Dong Wang Immortal said gently. She had never seen someone who cultivated so desperately. He cultivated day and night, and he was still a soul body. Yi Qinghan nodded. The journey in the desert was indeed very dangerous. He had to maintain a clear state of mind or he might lose his life. There was only one bed, and it wasn't very big. Could only fit 2 people at most. Yi Qinghan looked at the bed, and the corner of his mouth twitched. He said in a low voice, "You sleep. I'll sit at the head of the bed and rest for the night." "Hee, you're still shy. You have already hidden in my embrace so many times. I have already given up. Come up, let's sleep together. But you can't move around," Dong Wang Xian teased. Yi Qinghan smiled bitterly. This girl was indeed very pure. Although she had intentions, they were people from 2 different worlds. They were destined to have no future, so he did not want to hurt her. "Come on, look at how red your face is." Dong Wang Xian pushed Yi Qinghan down and laid on his chest. With a kick of his long legs, the blanket covered the 2 of them. Dong dong dong, the sound of their hearts beating could be heard clearly as their chests bumped against each other. Yi Qinghan had never thought that he would be so innocent as to share a bed with such a beautiful woman. Perhaps he treated her as a younger sister, or perhaps he treated her as his benefactor, but he did not harbor any evil thoughts. Yi Qinghan looked at the ceiling with no distracting thoughts in his eyes. He, who was tired all year round, quickly fell asleep. Perhaps it was because Yi Qinghan had accidentally intruded into her world. Dong Wang Xian did not sleep well these days. Although they were sharing a bed, she did not think too much about it. Instead, she felt a sense of security. After a while, she heard the sound of steady breathing. The night passed quickly. This night, Yi Qinghan slept the most easily. He did not have any burden and only woke up in the morning. Dong dong dong, there was a knock on the door. "Princess, we can set off now." Zhao Lei's voice came from outside. Yi Qinghan and Dong Wang Xian were both awakened. They immediately got up. Yi Qinghan immediately turned into his energy state and continued to hide in her embrace. He had no other choice but to hide in this place. Dong Wang Xian retracted her shy blush. She took a deep breath and washed her face. She sprinkled some perfume on her body and walked out of the room. Dong Wang Luoxian was not among the crowd. He was already in the carriage. Without Dong Wang Luoxian's gaze, Yi Qinghan and Dong Wang Xian were much more relaxed. She quickly left the inn and entered the carriage. Hoo, luckily uncle is not here." Dong Wang Xian smiled mischievously. Yi Qinghan left Dong Wang Xian's body and observed the streets of Immortal Peach City through the window. He did not sense the aura of Wu Chuan and the rest. "Those who came to arrest me are all mystic Immortal Realm experts. Wu Chuan might be the strongest, but his combat strength is far inferior to Dong Wang Luoxian's uncle. If they are really tailing the convoy, it's impossible for Dongwang Luoxian to not sense them. Unless it isn't Wu Chuan's group, but someone else. Yi Qinghan observed for a long time. He could almost confirm the purpose of the tailing. They were here for Dongwang Xian's mission. However, even if it was not Wu Chuan and the rest, Yi Qinghan did not want to leave the carriage. He wanted to take a gamble. He wanted the experience of reconstructing the golden body. Therefore, he had to go to the East Royal Scripture Depository. A large group of mercenaries was ready to go. Most of them were immortal heavenly immortals. Their combat power was not to be underestimated. Jia. The convoy set off again under the command of the commander. Not long after the carriage left the city, an old man walked out of the mercenary hall. He was wearing plain clothes and his aura was restrained. He looked like an ordinary heavenly immortal. Holding a walking stick, he got on a carriage and followed the carriage out of the city silently. He maintained a distance of 30 li from the East Royal carriage. 30 li was a very strange distance. No one would suspect that this carriage was following the East Royal carriage. Moreover, there were many carriages of different sizes on the road. There were also people traveling alone. A few thousand li to the east of Immortal Peach City was the Great Divine Desert. It was as big as the Eternal World. The carriage would need a few days to get there. The carriage quickly entered the desert. Yellow sand was everywhere. The fine sand was blown up by the wind. Some of the sand moved and could even swallow the caravans. The desert was full of danger. The moment they entered the desert, Yi Qinghan immediately became vigilant. The sense of danger grew stronger. This was a sixth sense that had never been wrong. Hua! The immortal soul lock was unlocked. Yi Qinghan opened the window slightly and looked at the sand outside. The sand moved and the endless desert was filled with despair. His heart grew heavier. There was no road in the desert. Everything was random. Many caravans would disperse after some time. Therefore, there were no other caravans besides this one. In the scorching hot desert, one did not dare to extend their divine sense too far. The scorching heat was extremely poisonous and could even burn the soul. This was a place of calamity for soul bodies. The first day was safe and sound. However, the sense of danger grew stronger and stronger. The speed of the carriage became faster and faster. Finally, they entered the depths of the desert at night. At night, the temperature of the desert reached the extreme. Even Yi Qinghan, who was hiding in the carriage, felt a piercing pain around his immortal soul. At night, even the immortal horses did not want to move. The mercenaries could only take out firewood from their immortal rings and light a bonfire. This night was still safe and sound. Dongwang Xian thought that Yi Qinghan's trembling was an illusion. The next day, nothing happened. Dongwang Xian heaved a sigh of relief. At most, they would be able to get out of the Great Divine Desert in 3 days. However, on the night of the second day, a cold wind blew. Killing intent accompanied the flying sand. Dongwang Luoxian, who was hiding in the carriage, raised his eyebrows. His divine sense quickly covered a distance of tens of li. With the immortal sword in hand, he kept moving the scabbard. His eyes were like torches as he looked around. His iron fist gradually tightened on the sword hilt. Everyone, be alert. There are enemies approaching. Dongwang Luoxian slowly got up and stared at the desert. However, he did not find any traces of enemies. Hua! Roar! All the mercenaries stood up and unsheathed their swords. All of them were extremely nervous. At this moment, Dongwang Xian could not help but look at Yi Qinghan in shock. If he still could not sense the danger now, he would be an idiot. However, Yi Qinghan's sixth sense had actually sensed the danger so many days in advance. This was simply inconceivable. Yi Qinghan had a calm expression. He activated the immortal soul lock and retracted his aura. His fingers parted the curtains as he stared at the sand below the carriage. It was as though the sand could tell him the location of the enemies. Chapter 23-21. Yellow sand danced in the air. The sky was originally filled with stars and the moonlight was like water. But after a moment, darkness descended. Even heaven immortal experts could only see 1,000 meters. Yi Qinghan's face was solemn. He activated the immortal soul lock and waved his hand. Pay attention to your defense. There might be quite a number of enemies. Sha sha sha, some horrifying sounds of sand flowing echoed in the silent night. It was unknown if it was the wind or people moving, but it sent chills down the spines of these experts. Dongwang Luoxian's aura was restrained. His eyes were deep. Heaven immortals could see 1,000 meters, but he could see tens of thousands of meters away. There were no enemies attacking, but the killing intent was self-evident. The enemies were approaching. They are not in the air or on the ground. That means be careful under the sand. Dongwang Luoxian reacted quickly and shouted out a warning. Hua! Xiao xiao! Hiss hiss hiss! Ah! In the blink of an eye, dozens of experts rushed out from the group of mercenaries. They were all immortal heaven immortal experts. The immortal weapons in their hands pierced through their bodies, cutting their flesh and breaking their bones. The mercenaries screamed in agony. Dozens of mercenaries didn't even have the chance to react. They were directly cut into pieces, leaving only broken skeletons. Boom! Those black-robed men directly shattered the skeletons. Not only did they destroy the bodies of the mercenaries, even their souls didn't escape. Kill, leave no one alive. A cold voice sounded. Even Dongwang Luoxian felt his hair stand on end. That voice seemed to come from the silence, and could take away all life. Who are you? You even dare to rob my Dongwang clan's carriage? Dongwang Luoxian asked furiously. Unfortunately, those experts didn't show any mercy. They kept killing the immortal earth immortal mercenaries. Even the heaven immortal mercenaries couldn't stop their attacks. Xiao xiao xiao. More than 100 mercenaries joined forces and gradually became anxious. Blood stained the battlefield. Heaven immortal and earth immortal experts kept falling. The mercenary group leader Zhao Lei was furious. He brought a few experts with him and charged into the crowd. They kept defeating the enemies and gradually stabilized the situation. Dongwang Luoxian moved to Dongwang Luoxian's carriage and was about to take her away. But just as he was about to open the carriage door, a gust of sword chi and killing intent came from behind him. A sword that could kill millions of people. This was a mystic immortal realm expert. Moreover, the other party was clearly not an ordinary low-level mystic immortal expert. He was definitely a match for Dongwang Luoxian. Dongwang Luoxian was shocked. He hurriedly turned around and pulled out his sword, thrusting it out. In order to block the aftershock of the attack, Dongwang Luoxian clashed head-on with the immortal horse. Instantly, sand flew about violently, and a gust of wind swept by. The fine sand turned into hidden weapons, piercing through the body of the immortal horse. Boom! When the immortal horse fell to the ground, immortal Dongwang's carriage was almost overturned. Immortal Dongwang, who was in the carriage, swayed and was almost thrown out. Fortunately, he was caught by Yi Qinghan. Shoo 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 shoo. In the blink of an eye, Dongwang Luoxian and the newcomer had exchanged close to 100 moves. The power was enough to shake the heavens and earth. Even the immortal earth immortals in the distance were affected. Their bodies were destroyed by the aftershocks, and their souls were drawn into the sword chi, directly sliced into pieces. The heaven immortal mercenaries were forced to retreat by the powerful aura. However, the group of experts who rushed out from the sand drilled into the sand, causing the sand to churn and the group of people to disappear. Defend under the desert. Whoosh, boom! Zhao Lei's sword pierced through the desert, directly blasting an expert out of the sand. His combat prowess was definitely stronger compared to any heavenly immortals Yi Qinghan had seen before. Immortal runes erupted together with the sword chi. Every strike contained the power to kill immortals. If one wasn't careful, they would be destroyed and even their souls would be turned into ashes. This was a true battle between immortal experts. It was extremely cruel. Flesh and blood were scattered all over the desert, and even the sand became murderous weapons. Yi Qinghan hid in the carriage. His divine sense was already circulated to the peak. His eyes were focused on the battle between Dongwang Luoxian and that terrifying sword expert. However, his soul was scanning the surroundings of the carriage. Clearly, the other party hadn't used his full strength yet. That black-robed leader was an attack-type expert, forcing Dongwang Luoxian to retreat step by step. However, Dongwang Luoxian's immortal arts were already circulated to the point of perfection. It was almost impossible to break through his defense in a short period of time. After attacking for a long time, that black-robed leader coldly spoke. "Number 9, are you all courting death? Why are you still not attacking and end this quickly?" "Whoosh, hua. As you wish, I will bring the Eastern Emperor Immortal Bell back." A black shadow flashed. His sword force was like a rainbow, directly rushing towards Dongwang Luoxian's carriage. Sword qi enveloped the entire area, as though everywhere the sword qi enveloped was a domain of sword Dao. No one could resist. Humph! After a groan, a white-haired old man appeared in front of the carriage. His aura towered up the sky, as though the heavens were standing there. No one could break through his aura. This was none other than the hall master of the mercenary hall, Situ Hao. That black-robed man was also shocked. He didn't expect that the other party would have a mystic immortal expert. "Situ Hao, can a mystic immortal like you block two of us?" "What?" The black shadow flashed as the two figures separated. One attacked Situ Hao from the left while the other attacked from the right. Whoosh! Situ Hao was forced to fly up into the air. With a sweep of his sword, he entangled one of the experts. "You guys are courting death. You guys even dare to touch the ancestral weapon of the Eastern Emperor clan." Situ Hao's sword collided with the immortal weapon of the other party. Seeing that they were evenly matched, he knew that he might fail today's mission. The other party had 3 mystic immortals. 2 of them were on par with him and Dongwang Luoxian. The other one wouldn't be weak either. He couldn't block them and could only threaten them, hoping to force them to retreat. Sadly, the other party came prepared. After tailing them for so long, how could they give up? Swish, swish, swish. The mystic immortal expert who was entangled with Situ Hao forced Situ Hao back with 3 consecutive moves. He opened up a path for the last group of mystic immortals and spoke in a low voice. "Situ Hao, mind your own business. If you leave now, you might still be able to live." Boom! Situ Hao's aura towered up into the sky. Every sword strike was flawless. However, the other party was too strong. It was basically impossible to defeat him in a short period of time. Both parties fought to the death. Even though the difference in strength was too great, Dongwang Luoxian didn't give up. "Xian run quickly." Dongwang Luoxian did his best to slash out. Just when he wanted to turn back to save the carriage, the leader didn't give him the chance. Number 10, capture the Dongwang Immortal alive and bring the Dongwang Immortal Bell away. The leader coldly commanded. Rustle, rustle, rustle. Number 10, the mystic immortal expert, laughed sinisterly. He quickly rushed out of the carriage and smashed the window with his palm, shattering it. This carriage was made from mystic iron, but it still couldn't block the attack of a mystic immortal. "Little beauty, come with me. I won't treat you unfairly." Number 10 laughed. Since Dongwang Luoxian and Situ Hao were both blocked, there was no one else who could stop him. Hence, he reached out his hand without any restraint, wanting to grab Dongwang Immortal out of the carriage. Roar, boom! A towering dragon might suddenly burst out from the carriage. A fist smashed out from the window, directly smashing into Number 10's throat. Pooh! Arg! Number 10 was caught off guard. He only had time to use his left hand to protect his throat. However, he still couldn't block the iron fist. His left palm smashed into the other party's throat. The terrifying force broke through his left hand's defense and slammed into his neck. He didn't even have time to breathe and was sent flying while coughing out blood. Thud, thud, thud. Number 10 retreated a few hundred steps. His face was contorted with malevolence. That punch almost pierced through his throat. He was too careless. At this moment, the experts in the desert were all stunned. Other than Dong Wang Immortal, there was another expert hidden in the carriage. Chapter 23-22. There was an expert in the carriage. Even Dong Wang Luoxian didn't know about it, let alone others. There's actually a Xian immortal expert. Number 9 and the black-robed leader were shocked. Who else could send number 10 flying a few hundred steps back with a punch other than a Xian immortal? Dong Wang Luoxian was overjoyed. He didn't invite Sidu Hao, but Sidu Hao came. Dong Wang Immortal must have something up her sleeve. If she could invite Sidu Hao, it wasn't impossible for there to be another Xian immortal expert in the carriage. But number 10 was very clear that the person who ambushed him couldn't be a Xian immortal. Otherwise, that punch wouldn't have just sent him flying a few hundred meters back. It would have pierced through his left hand and even his throat. It's not a Xian immortal. Number 10 adjusted his breathing and walked towards the carriage coldly. Dong Wang Luoxian's heart sank to the bottom when he heard that. Could it be Dong Wang Immortal? She's a direct descendant of the Dong Wang clan. Be careful. The black-robed leader took the opportunity to attack Dong Wang Luoxian again. Sword light soared into the sky. However, there was almost no one within the 10,000 miles of the desert. Even if there were heavenly immortal experts, they wouldn't dare to get close. It's not Dong Wang Immortal either. It's a man. This punch contains dragon might and is very domineering. It should be a man. Number 10 smiled cruelly. He was no longer barehanded. Instead, he took out a spiral-shaped weapon. The sharp blade was full of barbs and was stained with poison. How dare you ambush me? Today I will make you suffer a fate worse than death. Boom! Number 10 held the spiral-shaped immortal weapon and attacked the carriage's wheels. He wanted to destroy the carriage and force out Yi Qinghan. Be careful not to accidentally injure Dong Wang Immortal. Once the owner of the Dong Wang Immortal bell dies, it will automatically awaken and we will all die. The black-robed leader reminded angrily. I know. Bang! The immortal weapon smashed onto the carriage's wheels and the carriage broke into pieces. But at this moment, Dong Wang Immortal soared into the sky and dodged the aftershock. Yi Qinghan used this critical moment to send out a palm strike. Whoosh! The 5 elements teleportation technique and the 7th finger of the sacred exterminating finger were activated at the same time. Although it wasn't a powerful Xian immortal level secret technique, it was still a Xian immortal level technique. Boom! Yi Qinghan's coordination was too good. His timing was perfect. Number 10 had used up all his energy and before he could retract his immortal weapon, Yi Qinghan's finger landed on Number 10's chest. Bang! Puff! Number 10 was once again ambushed. It was as if he had sent himself to be beaten up. Although the sacred finger of annihilation did not disperse the Xian immortal body, it still sent Number 10 flying. He rolled for dozens of meters in the desert before stopping. I'm going to kill you. Number 10 struggled to stand up, but before he could catch his breath, the blood in his chest spurted out from his mouth. He looked up at Yi Qinghan and realized that Yi Qinghan was a spirit body. This is the Saint Annihilation Finger? Number 10 looked coldly at Yi Qinghan. That trash Sikong Tanlang was the joke of the entire immortal realm. There weren't many Xian immortals who didn't know him. How could a real expert not know about the Saint Annihilation Finger? Yi Qinghan's aura was restrained. Cold light bloomed like a star that could steal people's souls. His immortal body glowed with immortal light. The immortal soul lock was activated and protected his spirit body. It was as if he had a real body. Whoosh! Dongwang Xian fell from the sky and landed behind Yi Qinghan. He looked at the battlefield in fear. Almost all the experts of the Dongwang family were being suppressed. Only Sidu Hao had a slight advantage. Unfortunately, it was useless. Dongwang Luoxian glanced over and guessed that Yi Qinghan was the murderer that Wu Chuan and the others were looking for. He didn't expect him to be hiding in Dongwang Xian's carriage. However, it was too late to blame him. He could only hope that he could stall one of the Xian immortals. Even if he could take Dongwang Xian away, it would be great. When Sidu Hao and Dongwang Luoxian saw that there was another expert on their side, their morale instantly changed. They switched from defense to offense, hoping that they could quickly kill their opponents and help Yi Qinghan. The battlefield was filled with killing intent. Yi Qinghan's palms were sweaty. He couldn't injure the opponent after 2 sneak attacks. This meant that they weren't on the same level. If he couldn't escape, he would die a horrible death today. Yeah, this is the Saint Annihilation Finger. I didn't expect this trash immortal technique to be so famous. Yi Qinghan licked his lips and stared at number 10. He purposely provoked him. I didn't expect this trash immortal technique to injure some trash. Roar! Number 10 Xian Immortal was furious. His killing intent soared. He waved his hand and was about to kill Yi Qinghan. Yi Qinghan smiled faintly and said, I know you're angry. However, I know you'll be even angrier later. You can't do anything to me. If you don't believe me, let's make a bet. Boom. Number 10 Xian Immortal didn't want to waste time with Yi Qinghan. His spiral-shaped immortal weapon directly landed on Yi Qinghan's feet. Unfortunately, Yi Qinghan took Dongwang Xian and teleported into the group of experts that were fighting. Bang! Yi Qinghan just entered the group. He punched a black-clothed man's temple and smashed him into the sand. That expert's soul was almost shattered. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Yi Qinghan didn't want to kill them directly. These celestial immortals weren't easy to deal with. It was possible to injure them with a sneak attack, but it was impossible to kill them. At least, he couldn't do it in his current state. Therefore, he retreated 100 meters away and looked at number 10 with an evil smile. What? You don't dare to make a bet with me? Yi Qinghan asked provocatively. The 10th assassin was furious. His aura surged as he flew into the air and roared, I'll bet your grandpa. If I don't kill you today, I'm not human. Boom. Whoosh. Fine sand danced wildly, covering the sky and the sun. The immortal weapon destroyed everything and directly enveloped Yi Qinghan. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan pulled Dongwang Immortal and kept teleporting. Every time, he escaped in panic. However, it was extremely dangerous. If he wasn't careful, he would be hit. If he was hit, his soul would die without a doubt. Even the immortal soul lock couldn't protect him. Dongwang Immortal wasn't Yi Qinghan. He wasn't that monstrous. At this moment, he was trembling in fear. His body was being pulled by Yi Qinghan as he kept teleporting. Countless ravines were created in the desert by the immortal weapon. Poisonous creatures were awakened and attracted by the smell of blood. All kinds of poisonous creatures gathered 10 miles away from the battlefield. Once bitten, even an immortal celestial immortal would go crazy. An immortal earth immortal might even be poisoned to death. Yi Qinghan was panting and sweating profusely. His soul felt like it was being cut by a knife. If it weren't for the immortal soul lock, he wouldn't have been able to escape so many attacks. Do you have any trump cards? Take them all out. Don't you have the ancestral weapon? Take them out and blast them. Yi Qinghan shouted at Dongwang Immortal as he fled. Dongwang Immortal screamed, I can't control the ancestral weapon. I'm only its host. Yi Qinghan glanced at Dongwang Luoxian and Situ Hao. They were still bitterly attacking and defending. It was impossible to determine the victor in a short period of time. Moreover, they were getting farther and farther away. They couldn't help him. It was impossible to rely on himself to fight Xian, Immortal number 10. Let's go. I'm not fighting anymore. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan grabbed Dongwang Immortal and kicked the sand away. His body shot towards the east like an arrow. Unfortunately, Xian, Immortal number 10, wasn't willing to let him go. No matter how monstrous Yi Qinghan was, he was only an immortal complete stage Earth immortal. He couldn't be faster than a Xian, Immortal expert. Boom! Whoosh! Number 10 rushed in front of Yi Qinghan in the blink of an eye. His immortal weapon swept back and blasted Yi Qinghan back into the battlefield. Chapter 23-23. Yi Qinghan was forced back into the battlefield by Xian, Immortal number 10. Even though Xian, Immortal number 10's face was hidden behind the black veil, one could imagine his expression. Yi Qinghan retreated with Dongwang Immortal, but he could only wander around the battlefield. After all, his speed was not as fast as Xian, Immortal expert. Yi Qinghan, block him for me. The Dong clan will not forget this favor. Dongwang Luoxian yelled at Yi Qinghan as he fought against the leader of the black-clothed men. Yi Qinghan really wanted to curse. He was only a soul and a high-level immortal Earth immortal. Even if his combat power was comparable to a peak Immortal Heaven immortal, so what? A peak Immortal Heaven immortal expert was still very weak in front of a Xian immortal. Dongwang Immortal could only rely on Yi Qinghan. She knew how terrifying a Xian Immortal expert was. Once he unleashed his full power, he could instantly kill a high-level Immortal Heaven immortal. Whoosh! Xian, Immortal number 10, controlled the immortal weapon and charged over, covering a radius of 1,000 meters. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan carried Dongwang Immortal and kept moving in a zigzag pattern. Every time, he would be swept by the immortal spirit Qi. The immortal soul lock played a crucial role, otherwise, he would have been crippled. Dongwang Xian had saved Yi Qinghan several times, so he had no choice but to save her. Moreover, he also wanted the technique of celestial immortals to reconstruct the golden body recorded in the ancient book of the Eastern Imperial family. Even if it was a failure, its value to him was unimaginable. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Yi Qinghan fled with all his might, and he began to run in a random direction. He specifically ran towards the group of black-clad celestial immortals, and it didn't take long before more than 10 of the black-clad celestial immortals were killed by Yi Qinghan. The situation was getting more and more dangerous. Yi Qinghan felt like a year as he dodged the attacks of the Xian immortal with difficulty. He thought that a long time had passed, but in reality, only a joss stick's worth of time had passed. In his current state, he definitely wouldn't be able to last through the night. Xian Air, don't you boom. Before Yi Qinghan could finish his sentence, Xian Immortal number 10 arrived in front of him and almost broke the Immortal Soul Lock's defense with his immortal weapon. Boom! Yi Qinghan, along with Dongwang Immortal, was thrown a few hundred meters away. Foundation! Think if you have any defensive treasures! Yi Qinghan roared. If this continued, he would die sooner or later. Dongwang Immortal was held by Yi Qinghan, and this time, he was also badly hurt. His big eyes were filled with tears as he looked at the approaching Xian Immortal number 10 with fear. His mind was in a mess. After being reminded by Yi Qinghan, he remembered that his father gave him a few self-defense items when he came out to train. Yes. Pull away. Dongwang Immortal shouted. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan immediately became excited and rushed away from him. Dongwang Immortal searched through the immortal ring and soon found 3 immortal treasures. One was a Xian immortal-grade defensive armor, and the other was a golden bone that was engraved with killing runes. However, it wasn't easy to activate it. The last one was a soul defense immortal equipment, Dragon Scale Soul Protector Bell. It was only the size of a palm, but it had heaven-defying power. Dongwang Immortal took out all 3 treasures and gave them to Yi Qinghan. Yi Qinghan swallowed a mouthful of saliva. These 3 treasures were not just priceless, they were simply things that he yearned for even in his dreams. However, he could only use the Xian Immortal Battle Armor and the Golden Bone. If he wanted to refine the Dragon Scale Soul Protecting Bell, he would need at least 3 to 5 days. The Xian Immortal Armor was easy to refine. As long as he wore it, its defense would be unparalleled. At least he would not be so weak when facing a Xian Immortal. Hua! Yi Qinghan did not hesitate to wear the Immortal Armor. A drop of his heart blood fused with the armor. The armor awakened and his aura surged. He turned into a war immortal. With a wave of his hand, the golden bone emitted a killing immortal aura. The origin of this bone was even more terrifying than the Xian Immortal Armor. It was the bone of an ancient beast and was carved full of runes by a supreme immortal rune. It was an offensive weapon that could kill Xian Immortals and destroy all living things. Each rune contained the power of a Xian Immortal. Yi Qinghan could not fully activate the golden bone, but with this bone in hand, his aura was completely different. Roar! Yi Qinghan clenched his fists and roared towards the sky, his draconic aura shaking the heavens. Suddenly, the Dragon Scale Soul Guard Bell responded. Since it was made of dragon scales, it naturally reacted to the dragon bloodline in Yi Qinghan's veins. Therefore, it automatically awakened and ran into Yi Qinghan's sea of consciousness to protect his powerful immortal soul. Yi Qinghan was also stunned. He did not expect this guy to take the initiative to send himself to him. Ha ha ha! Yi Qinghan laughed madly towards the sky. The 3 treasures given by immortal Dongwang were his blessings. They could make him comparable to an immortal Xian Immortal. Of course, this was only for defense. Immortal Xian Immortals could not break through his defense. Today, I'll let you know why the flowers are so red. Yi Qinghan had been blasted away so many times. How could he not be angry? With strength came confidence. Immortal number 10 sneered and mocked, a piece of trash. So what if you have a golden immortal weapon? An ant will always be an ant. Roar! Yi Qinghan's bloodline actually let out a dragon roar. The Dragon Scale Soul Protector Bell actually made his bloodline evolve. His immortal soul directly advanced to the immortal heavenly immortal realm. Yi Qinghan declared war with his aura. Terrifying shockwaves swept up the fine sand and formed a tornado around immortal Dongwang. Boom! Yi Qinghan stepped on the sand and took the initiative to walk towards immortal number 10. His eyes were as deep as the stars. His aura was definitely comparable to an immortal Xian Immortal. Sometimes, even an ant can overturn the sky, Yi Qinghan said coldly. Dongwang Luoxian and Situ Hao were overjoyed. If Yi Qinghan could stop Xian Immortal number 10, even if he only needed to last until the next day, they would have to retreat in order to not offend the Dongwang clan. Brother Yi, thank you for your help. This time, you saved my East clan's ancestral weapon. This old man will return the favor. If Wu Chuan and the others come again, this old man will also be willing to stand in front of you. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, boom! Dongwang Luoxian became more and more courageous. Now that there was hope for victory, how could he not cherish it? Therefore, his combat power was actually 30% stronger than before. Every attack was extremely accurate, and he gradually gained the upper hand. Situ Hao was originally stronger than his opponent. At this moment, his aura was like a rainbow as he pushed his opponent back a few thousand meters. The battlefield was getting bigger and bigger, and was divided into 4 areas. Overall, the East clan had the advantage. After all, the number of mercenaries was far greater than the group of black-clothed men and immortal heaven immortals. Only Yi Qinghan's side had 3 top-grade Xian Immortal-level defensive and offensive immortal treasures. He was barely able to fight Xian Immortal number 10, but because he couldn't completely control the immortal treasures, he could only passively defend. The killing power of the Golden Bone runes was too strong, and it was too difficult to activate them. Yi Qinghan knew a lot about immortal runes, but facing the Golden Bone runes, it was like a primary school student seeing a high school textbook that he couldn't understand. Boom! Yi Qinghan was constantly pushed back, but his immortal soul was protected. He crawled up from the ground as if nothing had happened. He was like a cockroach that could not be killed. Chapter 23-24. Boom! Yi Qinghan kept hitting the immortal weapon with the golden bone. The runes on the golden bone were activated by the immortal weapon, neutralizing the opponent's attacks every time. Whoosh! Immortal light shot up into the sky, and the battlefield turned into daytime. Yi Qinghan used stellar transposition and started to attack. Although he couldn't injure Xian Immortal number 10, he couldn't take the opportunity to capture Dongwang Immortal. Xian Immortal number 10 got angrier as he fought. An easy mission was ruined by a little Sky Immortal, and a soul at that. Kill! Xian Immortal number 10 crossed his hands, and the spiral immortal weapon turned into an immortal sword. The runes on the sword tore through the darkness. The sword fell from the sky and landed on Yi Qinghan's head. Whoosh! The yellow sand under his feet pierced through the void. Yi Qinghan's body sank into the sand up to his knees. He couldn't escape even if he wanted to, so he could only attack forcefully. Roar! Yi Qinghan used the dragon's scale soul-protecting bell to protect his soul. The golden bone exploded, and his black hair was blown straight like steel needles by the wind. He held the golden bone with both hands and used his soul to activate the runes on the golden bone. The aura of an ancient beast burst out and filled the sky. Roar! The terrifying ancient aura awakened, making people's hair stand on end. Even Situ Hao, Dongwang Luoxian, and the other Xian immortals were alarmed. As for the immortal Sky Immortals, they were so shocked that their limbs turned cold and their bodies stiffened. They couldn't even move. The ancient aura was the aura of an upper-level Xian Immortal. It was like a high-level Xian Immortal had descended, suppressing low-level Xian Immortals to the point where they couldn't breathe. Boom! Xian Immortal number 10's immortal sword hit the golden bone. The runes exploded even more terrifyingly. The murderous aura from the bone shattered mountains and rivers, and knocked Xian Immortal number 10 away. Xian Immortal number 10's perlicue cracked and his body twitched. He flipped in the air and spat out a mouthful of blood. His qi and blood were in chaos and his body was bleeding. His defense was penetrated by the rune's murderous aura and ancient aura. Bang! Number 10 was thrown several thousand meters away. His eyes were bloodshot and his flesh was twitching. He struggled a few times but was unable to stand up. Yi Qinghan was nowhere to be seen. He was not sent flying, nor did he escape. Instead, he was sent into the depths of the desert by number 10. He was bleeding from his 7 orifices and his mouth was full of sand. Even his ears were full of sand. His blood and sand mixed together. He looked much more miserable than number 10. Boom! Poof! Yi Qinghan rushed out of the depths of the desert and spat out the yellow sand in his mouth. He used his immortal spirit energy to expel the sand from his body. His mind was buzzing and the dragon's scale soul-protecting bell was trembling. The immortal soul lock had already been broken. Yi Qinghan covered his head and screamed. Even though his soul was perfectly defended, he was still beaten to this state by Xian Immortal number 10. This showed the difference between a Sky Immortal and a Xian Immortal. At this moment, the battlefield had quieted down. A gust of wind swept past. Everyone was staring at Yi Qinghan and Xian Immortal number 10. These two were the key to the battle. Whoever lost the ability to fight would be the end of the battle. Dong Wang Immortal rushed to Yi Qinghan and screamed in fear, "Brother Yi Qinghan, are you okay?" Yi Qinghan half knelt on the yellow sand and coughed up blood. His soul was in chaos. The tearing pain made him clench his fists. The golden bone in his hand was dyed red with blood. It was showing signs of recognizing a master. Once it recognized a master, his combat power would increase by several times. Huff huff huff. Dong dong dong. Yi Qinghan gasped for air. His soul felt like it was about to explode. His eyes were not just red. They looked like they wanted to eat someone. His ferocious gaze was like that of an ancient beast that only knew how to kill. "No one can stop me from doing what I want to do." Yi Qinghan's voice was emotionless. It was hoarse and desolate and contained a monstrous, killing intent. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan grabbed the golden bone and stood up. He stared coldly at Mystic Immortal Number 10, who was slowly standing up. The black veil on Mystic Immortal Number 10's face had been shattered. His face was cold and ferocious. It was a disgrace to be sent flying by Yi Qinghan. "Do you know who I am? You ruined my organization's plan today. I'm afraid you don't have the ability to withstand our anger." Mystic Immortal Number 10 looked like he was in his 30s, but his combat power was not weak. He must have an extraordinary background. Yi Qinghan's mouth twitched. He grinned evilly. "I dare to kill people from Ultimate Peak Mountain. No one's anger can compare to my own. If you want to take Xian away, you'll have to step over my dead body first." The leader of the black-clothed men turned his attention to Yi Qinghan. He seemed to know Yi Qinghan's identity. He asked coldly, "Are you the Yi Qinghan wanted by Ultimate Peak Mountain?" "Yes, so what?" Yi Qinghan raised his head and asked coldly. The black-clothed man held his sword and confronted Dong Wang Luoxian. He glanced at Yi Qinghan and said coldly, "If you capture Dong Wang Xian and swear allegiance to me, Ultimate Peak Mountain won't dare to do anything to you. What do you think?" "Ha ha ha!" Yi Qinghan laughed and mocked disdainfully. "Since I dared to offend Ultimate Peak Mountain, I have the confidence to escape. I don't need any force to help me. The same goes for you. I owe Dong Wang Xian my life. I'll just return it to her today. But it's impossible for you to complete your mission. I don't care which force you are from. You've got guts." The leader of the black-clothed men was so angry that he laughed. He looked at Mystic Immortal Number 10 again. He had been severely injured by the Golden Bone Rune. The Golden Bone Rune must have an extraordinary origin. It might contain a killing rune set by a Golden Immortal. Number 10 couldn't shake it, let alone kill Yi Qinghan and take Dong Wang Xian away. This mission was doomed to fail. Let's go. Don't blame us for failing the mission. If you want to blame someone, blame the wrong information. The black-clothed man was very straightforward. Even though he knew that the mission had failed, he didn't bother. Therefore, he ordered his men to take away the corpses of his subordinates. They came quickly and left quickly. The 3 mystic immortals brought the remaining 12 immortal heaven immortals and 20 corpses and disappeared into the night. Dong Wang Luoxian felt as though he had just escaped from death. His entire body felt cold. If it wasn't for Situ Hao and Yi Qinghan, he wouldn't be able to bring back the ancestral artifact. Dong Wang Luoxian looked at Situ Hao with gratitude. He cupped his fists and said, "Hall Master Situ, this old man will never be able to repay this favor. Please accept this old man's bow." With that, Dong Wang Luoxian wanted to kneel down and thank Situ Hao. However, Situ Hao was hired. He really couldn't get this favor. Therefore, his figure flashed and he directly stabilized Dong Wang Luoxian's arm. He smiled and said, "Dao brother Luoxian, this little brother really can't accept this bow. I was also hired by that last Xian heir. I was paid to help her. How would I dare to accept this favor?" Dong Wang Luoxian looked at Yi Qinghan with excitement. She didn't think that his sixth sense would be so accurate. Dong Wang Luoxian didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He didn't think that Dongwang Luoxian would be so determined to hire a mystic immortal hall master. Situ Hao looked at Yi Qinghan with curiosity. He then looked at Dongwang Luoxian. He seemed to understand why he felt the aura of another person when he saw Dongwang Luoxian that day. This lass had hidden a man's soul in her body. However, this involved the Dongwang clan's face. He couldn't say anything and could only pretend that he didn't know. Chapter 23-25. The desert was shrouded in darkness again. Yi Qinghan stood proudly with the golden bone in his hand. He maintained a peaceful distance from the two Xian immortal experts. Dongwang Luoxian looked at Yi Qinghan with a serious expression. At this moment, he was also puzzled. Why was Yi Qinghan in Dongwang Xian's carriage? Why didn't Wu Chuan find him when he was searching for the carriage? Why couldn't he find him? Yi Qinghan, this old man wants to repay your kindness. However, I want to know when you entered Xian Heir's carriage? Dongwang Luoxian asked with a voice transmission. Yi Qinghan's mouth twitched slightly. He knew that this involved the reputation of Dongwang Xian and the Dongwang clan. He didn't dare to speak carelessly. After thinking for a while, he replied with a voice transmission, "Not long ago, I also sensed danger and reminded her to hire a Xian immortal expert to escort the carriage. Where are you hiding?" Dongwang Luoxian's killing intent rose as he asked angrily. Yi Qinghan slowly took a step back and glanced at the group of mercenaries. All the Earth Immortals were dead, and more than half of the Immortal Heaven Immortals were dead. There were less than 10 of them left, and they were all heavily injured by the aftershock. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan's body flashed as he used the 5 elements teleportation technique. The golden bone in his hand swept past the heavily injured celestial immortals, while the killing runes and primordial aura once more surged out, completely engulfing Zhao Lei and the other mercenaries. A unique primordial aura swept into their seas of consciousness, wiping out all of their recent memories. Now, only the 4 of us know where I am hiding. As for these mercenaries, I have already wiped out their memories. Even if there are aftereffects, it's better than death. Will you still be worried about where I am hiding and even want to be my enemy? Yi Qinghan said coldly. Zhao Lei and the others were already heavily injured, and their souls were very weak. Now that Yi Qinghan attacked them, they fainted on the spot. However, as Yi Qinghan said, losing one's soul was better than dying. Situ Hao frowned. He didn't expect Yi Qinghan to be so decisive. Wasn't he afraid of offending the mercenary hall? Dongwang Luoxian's fingertips trembled slightly. He was actually speechless. Dongwang Xian immediately protected Yi Qinghan and quickly said to Dongwang Luoxian, "Uncle, if it wasn't for him, we would all be dead. We even lost the ancestral artifact. Now only the 4 of us know about this. I believe that Senior Situ wouldn't speak of this, and neither would you. At worst, I'll just marry Brother Yi. Don't make things difficult for him." Situ Hao bitterly smiled, shook his head and said, "To be honest, I really have to thank this junior today. Otherwise, my mission would have failed, and your mission would have failed as well. Even the ancestral artifact would have been lost. Now that we've protected the ancestral artifact, why bother with this matter?" Dongwang Luoxian took a deep breath. It was impossible for Dongwang Xian to marry Yi Qinghan. Otherwise, the Dongwang clan would be at odds with the ultimate peak mountain. Yi Qinghan was self-aware. He said indifferently, "Senior, don't worry. As long as I can escort you to the Eastern Imperial Continent and obtain the things promised by Princess Xian I will leave for good. I will never appear in front of Xian again. I will also never mention what happened today." Dongwang Xian curled her lips and looked at Yi Qinghan. She was about to cry. She didn't expect Yi Qinghan to reject her. Dongwang Luoxian frowned and looked at Yi Qinghan. He asked in a deep voice, "What did Xian promise you?" Yi Qinghan shrugged and replied indifferently, "Senior, You can see that I am a spiritual body. I gave up on my physical body when I was in the spirit immortal realm. It is impossible for me to reconstruct the golden body. However, she said that there is a book in the Eastern Imperial Clan's library that recorded an immortal heaven immortal reconstructing the golden body. He almost succeeded. I want to see the process and learn from his experience. I hope that I can reconstruct the golden body. Dongwang Luoxian pondered for a moment. He then shook his head and said, "You should give up. I have seen that record too. It is not realistic. If you want to reconstruct the golden body, you have to cultivate to the immortal golden immortal realm. However, without a physical body, you will not be able to pass the golden immortal tribulation. Therefore, this is a death tribulation. I advise you to stay in this realm and find a small place to spend the rest of your life peacefully." Yi Qinghan was silent. Others might think that it was impossible, but he wouldn't give up when there was a chance. "If I thought like you, I wouldn't have appeared in the undying immortal realm. And tonight your ancestral weapon would have been lost." Yi Qinghan replied in a heavy voice. Dongwang Luoxian didn't want to see Yi Qinghan anymore. He was already impatient with his attitude. It was naturally impossible for him to enter the Eastern Imperial Clan to borrow the immortal art to reconstruct the golden body. However, he didn't say it directly because he still needed Yi Qinghan to escort the convoy. With 3 Xian immortal rank treasures, Yi Qinghan's combat strength was already at the Xian immortal realm. Let's talk about this in the future. This time, the origin of the person who attacked us is unknown. We have failed the mission and we don't know if he will ambush us again. Therefore, we should leave tonight. The earlier we leave the Great God Desert, the better. Dongwang Luoxian spoke in a muffled voice. Situ Hao didn't refute. As for the life and death of these immortal heaven immortal mercenaries, it wasn't as important as this mission. This wasn't just a reward of 200,000 immortal coins. It also involved an ancient ancestral weapon, like the Eastern Imperial Immortal Bell. Once it was lost, the number of people who died wouldn't be just a few immortal heaven immortals. Hence, the 2 Xian immortals decided to give up on Zhao Lei and the rest, allowing them to sleep in the desert. Swish! Dongwang Luoxian brought Dongwang immortal and sword into the sky. Situ Hao followed closely behind. Yi Qinghan glanced at Zhao Lei and the rest. He then glanced at the countless poisonous creatures glaring at them from afar. He knew that if they left, these immortal heaven immortals would die for sure. Everyone here was someone who lived on the tip of the blade. They naturally couldn't bear to see this happen. See. Yi Qinghan gritted his teeth and directly forced out a drop of dragon blood. Draconic might gushed forth as he inscribed immortal runes, using a drop of blood to protect over 10 immortal heaven immortals. This drop of blood contained a high-grade draconic might. The poisonous creatures naturally wouldn't be able to get close to it. Good luck to you all. Yi Qinghan's figure flashed as he chased after them. Dongwang Luoxian wanted to borrow Yi Qinghan's strength to protect the ancestral artifact. He also wanted to borrow the Xian Immortal's strength to escape to the East God continent. The speed of a Xian Immortal was too fast. Yi Qinghan kept shifting, causing the 5 elements' power in the sky to be in a mess. As an early-stage Immortal Heaven Immortal, his speed was 3 times faster than before. However, he still couldn't compare to a Xian Immortal. Zing zing zing. Shu shu shu. Yi Qinghan tapped the air with the tip of his feet and rushed towards the east. Although he couldn't catch up with Dongwang Luoxian and Situ Hao, Dongwang Immortal left behind some scent for him. That scent was too familiar, so he never lost track of it. They chased until daybreak. This night, the 4 of them actually rushed to the border of the Middle God Desert. They were almost in the center of the Center God continent. Xian Immortals were indeed Xian Immortals. After leaving the convoy, their speed was able to reduce a lot of time. It wasn't until noon of the second day that Yi Qinghan caught up with Dongwang Immortal and the rest, who were resting. Yi Qinghan's immortal robe was dyed red. He looked extremely tired. However, he didn't show any signs of weakness. He didn't even speak. He leaned against a rock and closed his eyes to adjust his breathing. Situ Hao started to admire Yi Qinghan. There were too few young people like him. He was suitable to work as a mercenary. Chapter 23-26. Situ Hao admired Yi Qinghan. Being a mercenary wasn't a good job. No one knew if they could live to see the next day. However, Yi Qinghan's sixth sense was indeed terrifying. He could sense the danger after a few days and insisted on Dong Wangxian hiring him. If it wasn't for Situ Hao, none of the East royal family's caravan would survive. Daoist Yi, why don't you join my mercenary hall? I'll give you the position of Vice Hall Master with an annual salary of 3 million celestial coins. What do you think? Situ Hao looked at Yi Qinghan indifferently and suggested calmly. Yi Qinghan leaned on the rock and breathed evenly. However, the fatigue had already seeped into his bones and soul. He didn't even want to open his eyes. Towards Situ Hao's olive branch, he only shook his head slightly and continued to adjust his breathing, stabilizing his soul that was on the verge of collapse. Situ Hao knew that Yi Qinghan was very tired, so he didn't disturb him any longer. After that, he sat down and adjusted himself. The battle last night didn't seem difficult, but it was absolutely thrilling. If Yi Qinghan was defeated, not only would the mission fail, both he and Dong Wang Luoxian might die. Therefore, both his and Dong Wang Luoxian's souls were even more tired. Dong Wangxian had a complicated expression. Her pure eyes were looking at Yi Qinghan. Perhaps she had a premonition that Dong Wangxian wouldn't agree to let Yi Qinghan join the East royal family, let alone let him enter the library to study the ancient books. She felt a little guilty. Yi Qinghan's soul was being protected by the dragon scale soul protector bell. It was constantly nourishing his soul. His fatigue and injuries were gradually recovering at a much faster speed than before. This dragon scale soul protector bell was probably worth more than 10 million celestial coins. It was definitely a high-tier mystic immortal artifact. Yi Qinghan looked at the dragon scale soul protector bell that was protecting his soul. He was deeply fond of this immortal artifact. With this immortal artifact, he would be invincible under the mystic immortal realm. He could even fight against mystic immortal realm expert. The dragon scale had the immortal dragon's will and had a special reaction to the immortal dragon's bloodline. Yi Qinghan's bloodline was half dragon's bloodline. Now that it was being nourished by the dragon scale, his bloodline was getting purer, and he gradually possessed the immortal dragon's bloodline. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan's dragon aura was getting stronger and stronger. Even though it didn't affect the two Xian immortals, it still woke them up. They looked at the faint glow on Yi Qinghan's body and couldn't help but be surprised. The soul of an early-stage eternal heavenly immortal was actually able to fight on par with a Xian immortal when protected by 3 Xian immortal-grade immortal items. This was something that not even a high-level eternal heavenly immortal could accomplish. Unfortunately, Eastern Emperor Luoxian shook his head in regret. Yi Qinghan had offended the Extreme Peak sect, which meant that he would never be able to become a consecrator or servant of the Eastern Emperor clan. He was even less qualified to become the son-in-law of the Eastern Emperor clan. In addition, he was a soul body, so the Eastern Emperor clan would not offend the Extreme Peak sect for him. Not only was Dong Wang Luoxian feeling regretful, Situ Hao was also feeling regretful. If Yi Qinghan had a powerful body, he would definitely recommend him to the headquarters of the mercenary organization, even if it meant offending the ultimate peak mountain. Unfortunately, Yi Qinghan was only a soul body, so his potential would be exhausted. However, Yi Qinghan didn't feel regretful. He firmly believed that one day he would regain his golden body. he would reach the eternal Xian immortal or even the eternal golden immortal realm. He had been working hard on this path. In the distant Qing Zun immortal kingdom, near the General Mountain, more than 20 experts of the insane sect had already reached the eternal spirit immortal realm. Lin Wutian had reached the eternal earth immortal realm. Although his battle prowess wasn't as good as Yi Qinghan's, he was still a monster who could fight with an eternal heavenly immortal. They went straight to the capital of the Qing Zun immortal empire and encountered many dangers along the way. However, Xianyuan Qingyun seemed to have sensed something. Under the escort of a Xian immortal expert, she arrived at the General Mountain and stopped Lin Wutian and the others. After checking their identities, she led Lin Wutian and the others to an unoccupied area. There is a territory 30 million li away from the capital that hasn't been granted yet. I will arrange for you to stay there first. It is about 10 million square kilometers, almost the size of your eternal world. That territory is rich in resources and has all kinds of mineral veins. It is considered a mid-level fief. I will try my best to get it for you. Consider it as me repaying Brother Ye's favor, Xianyuan Qingyun said calmly. Thank you, Princess. Lin Wutian bowed. Xianyuan Qingyun nodded calmly. She also knew that Yi Qinghan had offended the ultimate peak mountain. Yi Qinghan had even given up his physical body for this matter. That meant that her promise to help him temper his body to the eternal heavenly immortal realm was useless. Now, she could only solve Yi Qinghan's worries to repay the favor. The insane sect spent 30 years under the leadership of Xianyuan Qingyun and a Xian immortal to enter this unclaimed fief. There were large plains, hills, mountains, and ancient forests. The resources here were definitely enough for the insane sect to use. Don't be in a hurry to take root. After all, if you want a fief, I have to ask my father first. If you can't get this fief, I will help you get a worse one. Xianyuan Qingyun glanced at everyone and asked, the overlord's name can't be Big Brother Yi. You can elect a leader. When the time comes, the overlord's name will be written in that person's name. This is officially recognized. No one will dare to casually oppress him. Emperor Yi and Jian Qinshua looked at each other. They were women and were destined not to be the overlord. Therefore, after discussing with the veteran experts of the insane sect, they decided to give the title of overlord to Lin Wutian. Jiang Jingtian, Gu Qingyu, and the others did not object. The insane sect was originally one. Although Lin Wutian was a junior, for the insane sect and for Yi Qinghan, he was willing to sacrifice his life. There was absolutely no problem for him to be the overlord. Xianyuan Qingyun looked at Lin Wutian. From his attitude toward the group of spirit immortals of the insane sect, she knew that although he was a junior, his combat power was the strongest. She somewhat approved of him. Like father, like son. Are you Big Brother Ye's disciple? Xianyuan Qingyun stared at Lin Wutian and asked. Lin Wutian bowed slightly, cupped his fists and said, Yes, Princess. Xianyuan Qingyun nodded and said, You group of spirit immortals, build a few houses first. Whether you can get the fief or not, you will know in a year at most. After saying that, Xianyuan Qingyun left the territory under the escort of the mystic immortal experts. Yi Qinghan did not know that the insane sect had been settled. No matter where he went, he was always concerned about their safety. After resting for about half a day in the depths of the Middle God Desert, the night gradually darkened. Yi Qinghan woke up and found that Dongwang Luoxian and the others were still waiting for him. He could not help but smile and say, Thank you for waiting, seniors. Let's go. Dongwang Luoxian looked coldly at Yi Qinghan without any gratitude. He only said coldly, Please return the 3 immortal treasures when the Dongwang family comes to receive us. The Dongwang family will thank you in another way. Yi Qinghan licked the corner of his mouth with the tip of his tongue. Although he was reluctant to part with them, he did not have the thought of being greedy for the 3 treasures. After all, the 3 treasures were definitely worth more than 50 million immortal coins. An ordinary superfamily's foundation was not comparable to that. Don't worry, I will not be greedy for the 3 treasures, Yi Qinghan said calmly. Dongwang Luoxian looked guilty. He kept feeling that the Dongwang family was getting rid of him after he had outlived his usefulness. The 4 of them rushed to the center of the Center God province overnight. On the last night, because they were fast enough, they avoided a lot of trouble and entered the center of the Center God province safely. Dongwang Luoxian was worried that there would be danger, so he had no choice but to hire Sidhu how to send them to the Dongwang family's receiving place again. Chapter 23-27. The hinterland of the Center God province belonged to the humans. Even the capital of the Dragon Emperor Immortal Kingdom was here. As long as one entered the big cities, there were rarely any fights. There were humans, ferocious beasts, humanoid giant beasts everywhere. On the surface, it looked very peaceful, but in fact, there was no place more dangerous than the Center God province. The 3 experts brought Dongwang Immortal and sped through the wilderness. The wilderness at night was as bright as day. The stars and moonlight shone down and visibility was very high. Many adventurers took advantage of the night to search for high-tier immortal beasts for immortal cores, beast hides, flesh, and so on. There was also a large group of caravans setting up camp. The mercenaries were vigilantly keeping watch. Once they saw Yi Qinghan and the rest, they were ready to fight. However, Dongwang Luoxian did not think of resting nearby. His figure flashed and left the caravan's encampment. There are still 4 more cities before we reach the Dongwang Immortal Kingdom's rendezvous point. The average distance between each city is. With our speed, it would take us about 3 days without any rest. Everyone, work hard. We won't be resting for these few days. Dongwang Luoxian said in a deep voice. Yi Qinghan did not reply. He just moved forward peacefully. He was secretly planning when to leave the group. There was no danger now. The ultimate peak mountain could not extend their reach that far. Even if there was a warrant, it was only targeted at the West God province. The Center God province did not acknowledge it at all. Once he left the group, the 3 Xian immortal-level immortal treasures would have to be returned to Dongwang Immortal. His strength would drop a lot. Although Yi Qinghan was reluctant, he had no choice. The 4 of them traveled for another 7 or 8 days. They were only 1 city away from the rendezvous point. Yi Qinghan saw a majestic big city. After searching on the map, he found out that this city was called Dragon Sun City. The city lord was a dragon immortal. His cultivation was close to the high tier of immortal Xian immortal. The city was very safe. It's best to stop here and follow Dongwang Luoxian to the rendezvous point. I can't guarantee that Dongwang Luoxian will not harm me. Yi Qinghan made up his mind. Suddenly, he turned to Dongwang Luoxian and said, "Even if I see you off for 1,000 miles, we will have to part. I will see you off to this point. I will return the 3 immortal treasures to you. Princess Xian Heir, I have returned the life that I owe you." With that, Yi Qinghan took off his mystic immortal battle armor and took out the dragon scale Soulguard bell. He placed it together with the golden bone and presented it to the Eastern Emperor. Dongwang Xian was unwilling to give up. He tugged on Yi Qinghan's clothes and said, "Big brother Yi, follow me to the East God province. At least the journey will be safer." Yi Qinghan smiled. It might not be safe to follow the Dongwang clan to the East God province. In fact, it might even be more dangerous because Dongwang Luoxian's attitude was very obvious. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan waved his hand and pushed away Dongwang Xian's hand. He smiled and said, "I will not follow you guys. In this Dragon Sun City, no one will dare to offend the Dongwang clan. I have offended so many forces, I will not cause trouble for the aristocrats." With that, Yi Qinghan turned and walked towards the Dragon Sun City. He only left a back view for the 3 of them. Dongwang Luoxian was rather satisfied with Yi Qinghan's action. He knew when to back off. He did not want to make things difficult for him and ruin his image in Dongwang Xian's heart. Dongwang Xian held on to the 3 immortal treasures that Yi Qinghan returned. He wanted to chase him back. However, there was no reason for him to do so. He only wanted to pay some celestial coins. However, an arrogant person like Yi Qinghan would not accept it. Therefore, he could only watch helplessly as Yi Qinghan left. With regards to Yi Qinghan's departure, Dongwang Luoxian heaved a sigh of relief. Situ Hao also felt that it was a pity that such a demon did not have a physical body. Xikong Tanlang is a joke. If he cherished talents, he would no longer be the joke of the undying, immortal realm. He would even be respected by the people. What a pity! He forced Yi Qinghan to destroy his physical body. He destroyed a demon. Situ Hao said with regret. This is fate. We can't change the reality. Dongwang Luoxian did not feel any regret. If Situ Hao was not here, he might even kill Yi Qinghan to prevent the Dongwang clan's reputation from being tarnished. Yi Qinghan entered the Dragon Sun City. He did not have any money on him. At most, he only had a few thousand celestial coins. The immortal soul lock that he bought with 1.5 million celestial coins was still broken during the battle. The only thing he could be thankful for was that he managed to keep his life. Dragon Sun City was very close to the capital of the Dragon Emperor Immortal Kingdom. Therefore, it was very prosperous and huge. Yi Qinghan walked on the road, silently thinking about his next step. Even if he was penniless, a few thousand celestial coins would only be enough for him to stay in a hotel. He could not even refine immortal treasures to sell. Should I sell Little Fox Immortal? Yi Qinghan could only smile bitterly. Selling Little Fox Immortal? Unless he was forced into a dead end, it was better not to do such immoral things. Without money and suitable immortal techniques, Yi Qinghan was also very helpless. He could not use immortal techniques like the Saint Destroyer Finger. Once he used them, Wu Chuan and the rest would be very well informed. They would definitely be able to track him down. There were many spiritual bodies in the undying, immortal realm. There were also many spiritual bodies at the heavenly immortal level. Therefore, Yi Qinghan would not be exposed just by relying on his spiritual body. The Center God Province was too far from the West God Province. No one would care about the wanted posters there. Yi Qinghan looked around, hoping to find a job. It was better if it was a little dangerous. At least he would have a place to settle down before he could go to the East God Province Ancient Emperor Academy. After looking for a long time, he still could not find a suitable job. It was either the pay was too low or he had to do some dirty work. He did not like it at all. After asking around for a long time, Yi Qinghan found that there was really no good place to go other than the Mercenary Hall. However, the Mercenary Hall was too powerful, and his identity could be exposed at any time. Therefore, he could only settle for the next best thing, which was to find a middle-sized wealthy merchant family and apply for a job as a guard. These wealthy merchants did not lack money, but they lacked experts. The pay was good enough, and they could earn hundreds of thousands a year. This was probably the fastest job to earn money. In the east of Dragon Sun City, the Qian family lacked everything except money. The Qian family's businesses spread throughout Dragon Sun City. They even extended their influence to the capital. They were so rich that they could rival the city. Every year they would recruit heavenly immortal experts. A high-level heavenly immortal could earn an annual salary of 500,000. After Yi Qinghan asked around, he decided to sneak into the Qian family and get a few years' worth of offerings before equipping himself. Along the way, Yi Qinghan did not care about his appearance. He was unshaven and looked like a middle-aged man in his 30s. On the other hand, Yi Qinghan on the wanted poster was a young man in his 20s. At this moment, he was in Dragon Sun City. Yi Qinghan was confident that he could hide from the Qian family and enter the Qian family with another identity. Whoosh! Whoosh! Yi Qinghan's figure flashed as he rushed towards the east of the city. In the east of Dragon Sun City, there was an endless stream of horses and carriages every day in front of the Qian residence. Those who could come and go were all large merchants. There were also experts who came to apply for the position of a consecrator. The guards outside the Qian residence were all immortal earth immortals. The pay was high and the danger was low. Therefore, everyone wanted to enter the Qian residence. Yi Qinghan was dressed in green. He dragged his tired body to the Qian residence. He cupped his fists and said, Yi Qinghan from the borderlands is here to apply for the position of a consecrator. The guards were only immortal earth immortals. They did not dare to offend a heavenly immortal like Yi Qinghan. However, they could see that Yi Qinghan was just a spiritual body. They could not help but feel disdain for him. Chapter 23-28. The Qian clan's business was huge, but they didn't have any Qian immortals. Every year, they would pay a large amount of tribute to the Dragon Sun City Lord for protection. Therefore, the Qian clan's business had been smooth sailing all these years. A yearly tribute of 8 million celestial coins was a terrifying number. The Qian clan always wanted to nurture their own Qian immortals. For this, the Qian clan spent a lot of money. The Qian clan's culture was also very strict. Survival of the fittest, survival of the fittest. The Qian clan's requirements for the younger generation were very cruel. The Qian clan was very generous. They would do anything to recruit those with monstrous talent. Therefore, the Qian clan's reputation was quite good. Yi Qinghan naturally knew about this. Therefore, he decided to come to the Qian clan. If he stayed in the Qian clan for a few hundred years, he would be able to buy a Qian immortal grade secret technique. The Qian clan's Qian immortal grade secret technique was open to the consecrators. This was also what Yi Qinghan was looking forward to. Yi Qinghan stood outside the Qian residence and waited silently. The Qian residence was heavily guarded and deep within the palace. There were eagle eyes everywhere. Because the Qian residence didn't have city walls, the Dragon Sun City Lord used the Qian residence as a city wall to save a lot of expenses. After an incense's time, a middle-aged man walked out of the Qian residence. He was wearing the Qian residence's direct descendant uniform. He should be from the Qian clan. The middle-aged man's cultivation was around the middle stage of the undying heavenly immortal stage. He had a smile on his face and didn't look down on Yi Qinghan because he was a spiritual body. Instead, he clasped his fists and said, "May I know where Dao friend Yi Qinghan is from?" Yi Qinghan bowed and replying heavenly immortal Qian, "This Yi comes from the border of the West God continent. It's a border with the Qing Zun immortal empire. I've been wandering the world for a long time. I've heard that the Qian clan is recruiting talents from all over the world. Therefore, I'm here to seek shelter." The middle-aged man smiled. With the Qian clan's reputation, it was naturally best for them to be recognized by the world. Therefore, when he heard Yi Qinghan's reply, he felt very happy. He nodded and said, "This old man is called Qianlan. You and I are of the same generation. Ors, our Qian clan's 6 heavenly immortal consecrators. After all, our business is, we need heavenly immortal grade experts." Yi Qinghan nodded and gestured for Qianlan to lead the way. Qianlan didn't stand on ceremony. She turned around and entered the Qian residence with Yi Qinghan following closely behind. There weren't many heavenly immortal grade experts in the Qian residence. Yi Qinghan could sense it with his spiritual sense. It should be because the consecrators had been sent out. It seemed like this line of work wasn't very good. One couldn't get paid just by staying in the Qian residence. The Qian residence's martial cultivation field was incomparably huge. It extended outside the city. The Qian clan's direct descendants and branch descendants all cultivated bitterly in the martial cultivation field. They ranged from earthly immortal to realm lord. Some children started cultivating when they were 7 or 8 years old. They didn't dare to fall behind others. Yi Qinghan looked at the secret techniques they were cultivating. He knew that the Qian clan's foundation was indeed terrifying. These secret techniques were all very advanced. Among the same realm, the Qian clan's people were definitely kings because of their immortal technique. Qian Lan brought Yi Qinghan to the corner of the martial cultivation field. There were plenty of weapons and a few stone tablets. They were filled with sword marks. Some were deep and some were shallow. The materials of the stone tablets were also different. Many of the sword marks were obviously created by high-level heavenly immortal experts. However, the stone tablets didn't crack. Brother Yi, these 6 stone tablets correspond to the 3 minor realms of earthly immortal and the 3 minor realms of heavenly immortal. The deeper the sword marks on the stone tablets, the stronger the attack power and the higher the salary. The highest salary for a heavenly immortal is 1,000,000 and the lowest is 300,000. Compared to the other aristocratic clans, our Qian clan's salary is definitely the best. Qianlan smiled. Yi Qinghan glanced at those weapons from the corner of his eyes. There were no immortal weapons of the Qian immortal realm. The highest among them was only a high-tier heavenly immortal realm weapon. Using these immortal weapons to leave a mark on the steel was definitely not as simple as he thought. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan took a fancy to a heavy sword at first glance. It was a high-level heavenly immortal grade weapon. He reached out and grabbed it. It weighed at least a few 100,000 pounds. The density of this immortal weapon wasn't something an ordinary person could use. Qianlan was also stunned. He didn't expect Yi Qinghan, a spiritual body, to choose to use a heavy sword. Yi Qinghan waved the heavy sword and tested it a few times. He asked curiously, "What if the heavy sword breaks?" Qianlan suddenly smiled and said, "Brother Yi, it's not that I'm looking down on you. If you can break the heavy sword, you can enjoy the highest salary of the Qian clan's heavenly immortal grade consecrators. Your annual salary is 1,000,000 celestial coins." Yi Qinghan shrugged. He was just asking. He didn't have the confidence to break the heavy sword. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan retreated slightly with the immortal sword in hand. The heavy sword was about 1 meter long and 10 centimeters wide. The blade was very sharp and the back of the sword was very thick. It would be very difficult to break the heavy sword through the stone tablet. However, he put his palms together and held the sword hilt. Boom! Yi Qinghan released his aura. His black hair fluttered and his domineering aura soared into the sky. In an instant it surged through the entire training field. The group of young disciples from the Qian clan paid attention to him. Bang! Yi Qinghan crossed his legs and formed seals with both hands. He kept carving immortal killing patterns on the back of the sword. The heavy sword's immortal light soared into the sky. The killing aura swayed his battle robes. That aura shocked Qianlan. How could this aura be just a low-level heavenly immortal? It was actually a spiritual body. Roar! Yi Qinghan stared at the stone tablet. The dragon blood in his body was boiling. The dragon roar was mighty and powerful. It reached the outside of the city. This is a dragon's bloodline? Qianlan was shocked. He didn't expect Yi Qinghan to have a dragon's bloodline inheritance. Moreover, it didn't seem to be of a low level. Whoosh! Boom! Yi Qinghan twisted the tip of his foot, shattering the stone tiles of the training field under his feet. He blasted out with the power of the Green Lotus Sword Song. The sword song reverberated between heaven and earth. He actually used a heavenly immortal grade technique. Roar! Puchi! Yi Qinghan became one with the sword. The immortal killing patterns complemented the heavy sword. He attacked with the might of the Green Lotus Sword Song. He also mixed in the 7th style of the space-piercing star-picking hand, condensing stars into a sword. It was a move that could kill an immortal soul from 1,000 miles away. However, he had changed it beyond recognition. Open! With a furious roar, his aura was monstrous. The sword's momentum was like a rainbow. It tore through space and time. The space at the corner of the training field was clearly distorted. Qianlan, who was standing beside Yi Qinghan, could feel it clearly. If this sword was aimed at him, he would definitely not be able to escape. Boom! Roar! Roar! The stone tablet corresponding to a mid-level heavenly immortal bloomed with immortal light. The runes were tens of thousands of feet high. However, it couldn't block Yi Qinghan's attack. The heavy sword sank into the stone tablet and pierced through it. The heavy sword stabbed into the stone tablet just like that. Yi Qinghan's hand hurt. His soul shook and he took a few steps back. He couldn't even pull out the heavy sword. His. Qianlan's eyes were wide open. As for the group of young people from the Qian family, they couldn't close their eyes. They all gathered around in shock. They touched the stone tablet and realized that it was still the same one. It definitely hadn't been changed. What kind of attack is this? Qianlan couldn't understand. He looked at Yi Qinghan in shock. Yi Qinghan replied indifferently, "This is just a clever attack. However, it's not difficult to kill a mid-level heavenly immortal." Qianlan didn't know what to say anymore. He was stunned on the spot. Yi Qinghan already knew what position he should choose. He stared at Qianlan and said, "Sixth brother Qian, you have seen my strength. I would like to apply for the position of instructor for the Qian family's direct disciples. As long as you give me enough resources and time, I can make your Qian family have mystic immortals." Chapter 23-29. Qianlan didn't expect that Yi Qinghan would actually want to be the instructor of the Qian clan's disciples. This was equivalent to a technique imparting elder. He would be in contact with the Qian clan's top immortal technique manuals. It wasn't something that anyone could do. Moreover, the Qian clan already had an instructor who was also an outsider. He was also a high-level heaven immortal expert who was only half a step away from the mystic immortal realm. Brother, it's not that I don't want to accept you, but we already have an instructor. Moreover, this matter needs to be reported to the clan head before he can make a decision." Qianlan didn't know what to do. She didn't want to offend Yi Qinghan, but she also wanted to keep him. After all, this combat technique was too terrifying. Yi Qinghan smiled confidently and said indifferently, "Let the instructor fight with me. At the same time, ask the clan head to see if I have the qualifications to be the Qian clan's instructor. If the Qian clan can't let me be the instructor, then I will leave." The Qian clan cherished talents and loved them even more. Yi Qinghan was indeed a monster. It could be seen from his sword that pierced through the stone tablet. His skillful combat technique was absolutely top-notch. If they missed this opportunity, it would be impossible to find such a monster again. Qianlan looked at Yi Qinghan. Even though he was a spiritual body, the position of instructor depended on his understanding of mystic techniques and combat technique. It depended on how he could impart his lifelong knowledge to the Qian clan's children. Combat techniques shouldn't be underestimated. In the same realm, combat techniques were the key to victory. If Yi Qinghan could nurture a few heaven immortals who were similar to him and had a physical body, the Qian clan didn't lack money. If they could buy some high-level mystic immortal-grade immortal treasures, then the Qian clan would have mystic immortals. Yi Qinghan looked at Qianlan with an abnormally firm attitude. If the Qian clan didn't agree to let him be the instructor, then he would leave. Because his goal was a truly powerful mystic immortal-grade mystic technique. "Brother Yi, wait for me to inform the clan head. Don't leave," Qianlan said seriously. Yi Qinghan nodded and watched as Qianlan left. He then sat cross-legged on the ground to adjust his breathing. Recently, he had been constantly on the run and was truly exhausted. If he could hide in the Qian clan for 100 years, his cultivation realm would increase by a minor realm and his battle prowess would increase by dozens of times. That would be the best outcome. The tens of thousands of young disciples of the Qian clan stopped cultivating and looked at Yi Qinghan from afar. Their faces were filled with envy and admiration. For a soul body to be able to do this, it was more than 1 in 10,000. Only the top monstrous geniuses in the Center God province could do it. There were less than 10 people who could do it. Yi Qinghan's soul quickly recovered and calmed down. The aura on his body was faintly discernible. Then, he swallowed a few more soul-type immortal medicines. Although their grades weren't high, they were supreme treasures to him. At this moment, a young disciple of the Qian clan walked up and bowed. "Master, this soul-type immortal pill is not bad. You can try it." Yi Qinghan opened his eyes slightly and looked at this young man from the Qian clan. He was only 14 or 15 years old, and looked very delicate. There was a heroic spirit between his eyebrows, and the light in his eyes was abnormally lively. It could be seen that this person was very smart and had good talent. If he was given a rating, he would get 8 points. To be able to get 8 points in Yi Qinghan's heart, it was 1 in a million. The only one who could get full marks was Lin Wutian. The rest of the people could only get 8 points at most. Yi Qinghan smiled slightly and didn't refuse. He took the soul-type immortal pill and found that the immortal soul power inside was very rich. The fragrance assailed his nose and stimulated his soul. He swallowed it. In a split second, his soul seemed to have ascended. His soul was constantly being tempered and improved by leaps and bounds. The original hidden injuries on his soul were quickly erased. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan's body bloomed with immortal light. The dragon's aura was even stronger, forcing the 4-year-old child to keep retreating. He looked at him with a face of horror. The 14 or 15-year-old youth's cultivation was only at the spirit immortal realm. At this moment, he also took a few steps back. He was suppressed by Yi Qinghan's aura to the point that he couldn't breathe. However, he was unwilling to retreat. He looked at Yi Qinghan with determination. After a long time, Yi Qinghan slowly opened his eyes. He looked at the little guy in front of him and couldn't help but smile. He said calmly, "What's your name?" "Master, my name is Qian Xuezhong," the little guy said with a bow. Yi Qinghan looked at Qian Xuezhong, who was at the little spirit immortal realm. He still had a physical body, but it was too weak. He was far from being a genius. His overall battle strength couldn't be considered a king among his peers. However, his intelligence could surpass his peers. Not bad. I can nurture him. Stand aside and don't leave. Yi Qinghan put his hands behind his back and straightened his back. He looked at the west side of the martial cultivation field and saw Qian Lan and 3 powerful immortal heaven, immortal realm experts rapidly approaching. One of the immortal heaven, immortal realm experts was full of hostility. He was the current instructor of the Qian family, Lu Zhenlong. The other 2 looked suspicious. One of them was a dignified old man. He was the head of the Qian family, Qian Sihai. He looked to be in his 60s. His cultivation wasn't high, but he was full of a superior aura. He had white hair and a youthful face. His eyes were full of wisdom. The entire Qian family was built by him step by step. He was definitely not a simple person. The other heaven immortal realm expert was the top expert of the Qian family's younger generation, Qian Shuilong. He looked to be about the same age as Yi Qinghan. He was at the early stage heaven immortal realm. However, his king's aura was very strong. He looked very handsome and bright. However, he was suspicious of Yi Qinghan. He even hated him because he was nurtured by the current instructor. Whoosh! A figure flashed and appeared in front of Yi Qinghan. The burly figure stood in front of Yi Qinghan and looked down at Yi Qinghan. he said disdainfully. How dare a soul of an early stage heaven immortal realm challenge me? Who gave you such confidence? Lu Zhenlong had a glorious life. He had been a mercenary for 300,000 years. In his mercenary life, he had carried out more than 60,000 missions and only failed once. However, he couldn't tolerate his failure. In the end, he quit the mercenary hall. However, his reputation in Longyang City had always been like the sun at noon. Who below the Xian immortal realm dared not to give him face? Yi Qinghan slightly raised the corner of his mouth. He took half a step back and looked at Lu Zhenlong. He replied indifferently, "Of course it's my strength that gives me such confidence. Since Instructor Lu is so confident, why are you afraid of my challenge? You're courting death." Lu Zhenlong was very hot-tempered. He was about to kill Yi Qinghan. At this moment Qian Sihai, the head of the Qian family, quickly stood between the two of them and said with a smile, "Don't worry, my Qian family cherishes talents. Every expert should be treated well. Since it's a challenge, it should be a fair fight. If Instructor Lu doesn't agree, I'm willing to give fellow Yi a satisfactory position." Lu Zhenlong snorted and looked at the heavy sword on the stone tablet. The heavy sword had penetrated the stone tablet. His pupils shrank and he thought, if I can't penetrate this stone tablet when I'm at the middle stage heaven immortal realm, how did this guy do it when he's just a soul? At this time, Qian Sihai and Qian Shuilong both stared at the heavy sword. They were obviously shocked. They were afraid that they couldn't do this even when they were at their peak. However, it was obvious that Yi Qinghan could do it when he was still in a tired state. In terms of combat strength, Yi Qinghan could kill them instantly. Whoosh! Bang! Qian Shuilong reached out and pulled out the heavy sword. However, the stone tablet shattered. The order and energy inside the stone tablet had been destroyed by the immortal killing formation. It was like an ordinary stone. It was fine when the sword was still in the stone, but once it was pulled out, the stone tablet shattered. Hiss! At this time, everyone gasped. If this sword pierced through the middle stage heaven immortal realm expert, it meant that the middle stage heaven immortal realm expert would be dead. Chapter 23:30. Everyone was shocked. Yi Qinghan's sword had reached a realm that no one could understand. At this time, even Lu Zhenlong was stunned. With his current strength, it was absolutely impossible for him to achieve such a sword. If he fought with Yi Qinghan, as long as Yi Qinghan's defense was good enough, he wouldn't be able to win. Qian Sihai also discovered that Yi Qinghan's combat strength wasn't simply terrifying, it had reached the level of a demon. If it was a fair fight, Lu Zhenlong would be crushed. He and Lu Zhenlong could be considered good friends, so he didn't want to affect their relationship because of Yi Qinghan, so he said, "Teaching disciples not only relies on combat strength, but also a good realm and a good teaching method. My Qian family's instructors not only teach the children cultivation, but also how to conduct themselves. This old man thinks that you can teach some children and then compare them. The strength of the children will represent your teaching level. What do you think? A strong dragon couldn't suppress a snake in its old haunts. Lu Zhenlong was a snake in its old haunts, while Yi Qinghan was a ferocious dragon. However, he didn't want to offend Lu Zhenlong, so he nodded and agreed. Although Lu Zhenlong was arrogant, he wasn't crazy. Yi Qinghan had already exceeded his scope of understanding. That sword was enough to explain the problem. Therefore, he hoped to surpass Yi Qinghan in teaching methods and protect his status and reputation. Naturally, he wouldn't reject Qian Sihai's suggestion. 10 years. Both of you will choose a group of young disciples. After 10 years, the two of you will compete in both civil and martial arts. Whoever has more disciples and is more outstanding will represent their side's victory." Qian Sihai's face was full of smiles. He tried his best to give the two of them enough face. As the saying goes, one doesn't hit a smiling face. Yi Qinghan and Lu Zhenlong had to rely on the Qian family to make a living, so they naturally wouldn't refute anything. As for fellow Taoist Ye's salary, it will be the same as Brother Lu's for the time being. 1,000,000 celestial coins a year. What do you two think? Qian Sihai stared at Yi Qinghan and asked. Yi Qinghan nodded. He didn't really care about his salary, but he cared more about the Qian clan's mystic, immortal-grade mental cultivation technique. As long as he could encounter a mystic, immortal-grade mental cultivation technique, it was more important than anything else. Then fellow Taoist Yi and Brother Lu can choose your disciples, Qian Sihai said with a smile. Yi Qinghan faintly pointed at Qian Shuzhong and said, I want this Qian Shuzhong. I'll let Dao friend Lu choose first. Qian Shuzhong was overjoyed, but he didn't show it. It wasn't that he was afraid of offending Lu Zhenlong, but he felt that if he showed it, it would be disrespectful to Lu Zhenlong. Lu Zhenlong snorted and said disdainfully, You choose first, lest you say that this old man is bullying you. Yi Qinghan smiled silently and looked at the nearly 30,000 disciples. There were about 10,000 young disciples of the Qian clan in the direct line, so the average distribution was about 5,000 people. He casually split the middle and said, The eastern half will be mine, and the other half will be Dao friend Lu's. The 10-year period will depend on the overall strength of each disciple. What do you think? It was very fair to split them in half, and Lu Zhenlong had no reason to be picky. He was very familiar with teaching this group of young children. Yi Qinghan's half wasn't considered good. Only Qian Shuizhong's talent was okay, but his physical body was too weak, and he was too lazy to cultivate his physical body. His potential in this lifetime was only SOSO, so Lu Zhenlong didn't have any objections. Shuizhong, you're in charge of this team. Give me the name list of this team. Write down their cultivation, specialties, talent, and other strengths and weaknesses, and give them to me, including your own. I'll use it tomorrow, Yi Qinghan said faintly. Qian Shuzhong quickly bowed and said, Yes, instructor. Qian Sihai was full of smiles. Splitting into two teams meant that the Qian clan's disciples would compete with each other. It would only be good for the Qian clan. Paying Yi Qinghan 1,000,000 extra each year wasn't a lot, but the overall benefits outweighed the disadvantages. If Yi Qinghan was really capable, it would naturally be better if he could cultivate a few more super heaven immortals for the Qian clan. Dao friend Yi, I'll give you a welcome dinner today. By the way, I'll tell you what resources you need. I'll try my best to help you, Qian Sihai said with a smile. Yi Qinghan nodded and signaled Qian Sihai to lead the way. Qian Lan was full of smiles and left the training field with Yi Qinghan side by side. On the training field, Qian Shuizhong began to get busy. He gathered the group of more than 5,000 people. There were people of all levels, and there were even a few immature children. They were at most 7 or 8 years old and were in the mortal realm. Qian Shuizhong asked a few good friends to help him divide the group into levels and quickly wrote down everyone's information. In the main hall of the Qian residence, Qian Sihai was full of smiles like a kind grandfather. He didn't put on any airs, but no one was willing to challenge the dignity in his bones. Yi Qinghan sat in the main seat, accompanied by Qian Lan. Opposite him was Lu Zhenlong, accompanied by Qian Shuilong. There were only 5 people in the main hall, and they represented the highest status in the Qian clan. The servants of the Qian residence delivered the best immortal wine dishes and high-grade immortal fruit. Each of them was priceless, and only the upper echelons of the clan were qualified to enjoy them. Yi Qinghan didn't stand on ceremony. He usually couldn't afford to eat these things. Many of them were beneficial to the soul, so he started eating. Qian Sihai looked at Yi Qinghan and didn't think much of it. However, Qian Shuilong and Lu Zhenlong's eyes were full of disdain. They felt that Yi Qinghan was really from a remote village and hadn't seen much of the world. Qian Lan could only smile apologetically. She toasted Yi Qinghan while entertaining Lu Jinlong. After Yi Qinghan ate a lot of food, he leaned on the chair and said, "Clan head Qian, to be honest, I won't be staying in the Qian clan for too long. I will leave after I nurture an expert comparable to a Qian immortal. However, the resources I want might be a little exaggerated. Clan head Qian hopes that you can cooperate." "Tsk." Lu Jinlong mocked in disdain. "Surnamed Yi, don't choke on your words. You want to nurture an expert comparable to a Qian immortal? How long? 1,000,000 years or 2,000,000 years?" Yi Qinghan raised a finger and said confidently, "At most, 1,000 years. Whether I am bragging or not, we will know within 1,000 years." Qian Lan looked at Yi Qinghan. Although she didn't believe in Yi Qinghan, she was still looking forward to Yi Qinghan's promise. The Qian clan didn't lack money or resources. What they lacked was a Qian immortal expert. Lu Jinlong didn't want to mock Yi Qinghan anymore. Everything depended on strength. Qian Sihai was looking forward to the appearance of a Qian immortal expert in the Qian clan. In order to nurture a Qian immortal expert, he had spent a lot of money. Therefore, he wasn't afraid of wasting his efforts this time. If there was an opportunity, he had to try. He said, "Then Taoist Yi, what resources do you need?" Yi Qinghan still hoped to obtain the dragon scale Soulguard bell. However, that thing was probably not something the Qian clan could possess. Therefore, he settled for the next best thing and said, "It's best if you have a Qian Immortal Soul Defense Immortal Artifact. If it's really difficult, a Heaven Immortal Soul Defense Immortal Artifact will do too. This immortal artifact is for me. As for the resources for those children, prepare a lot of body refinement resources. I need them all, from ordinary body refinement pills to Heaven Immortal level body refinement resources. The most important thing is that the quantity and quality can keep up." A Qian Immortal Soul Defense Immortal Artifact was worth tens of millions to hundreds of millions of celestial coins. The Qian clan could afford it, but it was impossible for them to give it to an outsider. Therefore, Qian Sihai hesitated for a moment and said with a bitter smile, "The best Heaven Immortal Soul Defense Immortal Artifact is around 10 million. It's no different from the lowest Qian Immortal level. Although my Qian clan doesn't lack money, how do I know if Mr. Yi can nurture a Qian Immortal expert for my Qian clan?" Yi Qinghan naturally understood Qian Sihai's worries. He said, "Then let's talk about it after I defeat Taoist Lu in 10 years. Just prepare enough body refinement resources for me." Chapter 23:31. Lu Jinlong took Yi Qinghan's words as a challenge, even if Yi Qinghan was telling the truth. Lu Jinlong and Yi Qinghan were at loggerheads, and the atmosphere in the lobby was a little strange. However, as long as the two of them did not leave the Qian family, Qian Sihai would be happy to see the two of them fight and maintain a stable balance. Qian Sihai had expressed his goodwill twice. Of course, he was more inclined towards Lu Jinlong. After all, he knew so many people and knew everything about Lu Jinlong. As for Yi Qinghan, at most, he would make use of him to see if he could cultivate a true expert. Yi Qinghan did not care and was not willing to communicate anymore. His goal was the immortal technique and salary. As long as these two things were in place, he did not care whether Yi Qinghan was making use of him or not. "Just open the library to me." Yi Qinghan stood up and bowed to Qian Sihai and the others, waiting for Qian Sihai to agree. Qian Sihai hesitated for a moment and decided to take a gamble. He nodded and agreed. Then, he gave Yi Qinghan a waist token and said, "Fellow Taoist Yi, this is my waist token. It allows you to enter and exit the library freely. No one will stop you." Yi Qinghan took the waist token, bowed again with cupped fists, and then left the lobby. In the lobby, Qian Shuilong spoke directly. He bowed and said, "Grandpa, this Yi Feng has an unknown background. Isn't it too risky to open the library to him directly? Lu Zhenlong naturally stood on Qian Shuilong's side and hoped that Qian Sihai would reconsider. Qian Sihai sighed and said, Shuilong, brother Lu, you know the situation of the Qian family. Without a mystic immortal, so what if we have money? Our fate is in the hands of the city lord of Longyang City. He can crush the Qian family at any time. In order for the Qian family to produce a mystic immortal, any danger is worth taking. Moreover, the Qian family will not be fooled. Although I agree to let him enter and exit the library freely, he cannot take out the immortal technique and cannot leave Longyang City at will. In addition, this person's combat power is indeed not to be underestimated. It is worth taking this risk. Qian Lan had been speaking up for Yi Qinghan. After all, Yi Qinghan had attacked him in front of him. The power of that sword was more than terrifying. Even if he was at his peak strength, he could not block Yi Qinghan's sword. After Yi Qinghan left the hall, he did not consider their opinions and went straight to the Qian family's library. There were a total of 7 floors. The first 3 floors were for those below the immortal level. The 4th floor was for immortal spirit level immortal techniques, the 5th floor was for immortal earth level immortal techniques, and the 6th floor was for immortal heaven level immortal techniques. As for the top floor, there were only 2 immortal techniques of the mystic immortal level. After Yi Qinghan entered the library, he did not stop at the bottom 3 floors. Instead, he went straight to the 4th floor. He did not directly look at the immortal techniques or the various offensive divine abilities. Instead, he searched for some ancient books that recorded history. He wanted to find some experience about the soul body forming the golden body. There were many books in the library. If he wanted to find information here, it was not something that could be found overnight. Yi Qinghan took a deep breath. He definitely could not let the mystical bird and the little fox immortal out now. Once they were out, Qian Sihai and the rest would definitely guess his identity. Therefore, he could only rely on himself to find the information. Yi Qinghan flipped through the ancient books, forgetting about sleep and food. He could read 10 lines at a glance and finish a book in almost an incense stick's worth of time. His memory was freakish, and he could remember everything he saw. He spent a day and a night reading. It was only when dawn broke that he finished all the books on the 4th floor. Although he was disappointed, he also saw a lot of the history of the Dragon Emperor Immortal Kingdom. He rubbed his eyes and his soul was tired. However, at this moment, the training ground was filled with young children. They were divided into 2 teams. The top was an immortal earth immortal, while the bottom was an 8 or 9-year-old child. The young men and women of the 2 teams were filled with fighting spirit and did not want to admit defeat. Qian Sihai, Qian Lan and the rest were looking at the training ground with satisfaction. Only when the 2 teams fought could their fighting spirit be aroused and the Qian family could grow stronger. Lu Zhenlong had already arrived and started to drill his own team of young disciples. Only Yi Qinghan's team was still standing there, not knowing what to do. Qian Shuizhong was holding a large stack of information. It was a detailed description of the people in his team. He looked at the entrance of the training ground with anticipation. Yi Qinghan had not arrived yet and he could not help but feel anxious. The sun was high up in the sky and Yi Qinghan, dressed in green, slowly stepped into the training ground. He looked at his team of young disciples who did not know what to do and could not help but feel dissatisfied. The disciples of the proud sect would definitely not do this. They all had their own independent consciousness. When Yi Qinghan appeared in the training ground, Qian Shuizhong and the rest finally had a backbone. They stood up straight and waited excitedly. Tap, 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 Yi Qinghan came to the east side of the training ground and reached out to take the list of information. He quickly summarized it and divided the more than 5,000 people into 5 large teams, 100 medium teams, and 500 small teams. Each small team had about 10 people. The ones with the lowest cultivation would be the small team, and the one with the higher cultivation would be the small team leader. They would go up in order, forming a large pyramid. Moreover, the leaders of each small team and medium team would be in charge of their subordinate. They would understand the strengths and weaknesses of their disciples and help them overcome their weaknesses. Every day they would have to complete missions in small teams. If they could not complete the mission, they would be punished and the entire team would be punished. If they could not complete the mission on the second day, the mission would be doubled. If the medium team could not complete the mission, the entire medium team would be implicated. If they could not complete the mission in more than 5 days, not only would the mission be doubled, the entire large team would be implicated. Once such a training method was implemented, not only would it cultivate the leader's sense of honor and competitiveness, it would also cultivate the team's unity. The training method of the older generation of the crazy sect was individual training. However, the training method of the inner sect was the same. Therefore, the cohesiveness of the crazy sect was very terrifying. Their combat strength was also very exaggerated. There was almost no one left behind, and their combat strength was very balanced. The 5 large team leaders were all at the beginner level of the immortal Earth Immortal. Yi Qinghan's team's combat strength was generally low. There was not even a mid-level Earth Immortal, let alone high-level Earth Immortals and Immortal Heaven Immortals. Shuizhong, you will be in charge of this team. If I am not around, I don't want to see a situation like today's. I hope that one day you will be able to lead a group and not wait to be led by someone else. Yi Qinghan said in a deep voice. Yes, we will follow the instructor's instructions. The morale of the whole team suddenly rose. Although their movements were not in sync, their fighting spirit was there. Everything depended on training. Yi Qinghan nodded in satisfaction. He looked down at everyone and said, "Forget everything you have learned before. From today onwards, I will teach you a new set of training method. I don't care if you are Earth Immortals or children. You will all follow my will." Everyone looked at Yi Qinghan expectantly. They wanted to see how Yi Qinghan would teach them. Yi Qinghan looked at everyone's expectant eyes and could not help but smile coldly. He said firmly, "Everyone, seal your strength and use your physical body to carry your weapons. Run until I am satisfied." "That's it?" Qian Shuizhong was stunned. He could not understand why Yi Qinghan wanted to waste time. "What I want is speed. Run 10,000 laps today. If anyone fails to meet the task, the whole team will be punished." Yi Qinghan released his aura and warned in a cold voice. The large team leader immediately sealed his strength and supervised his team members to seal their immortal force. Then, he took out his immortal weapon and rushed out. Lu Zhenlong, who was watching from afar, could not help but sneer. It would be strange if they could cultivate experts like this. Chapter 2332. On the training field, Yi Qinghan's team had an easy time in the first few laps. However, after running 50 laps in such a large field, those little fellows began to fall behind. They were then whipped by Yi Qinghan's energy, forcing them to run forward. After 100 laps, most of them began to feel tired. Some of them began to slack off and used a bit of internal energy. However, even if they only used a bit, they were still discovered by Yi Qinghan. "Pa!" Yi Qinghan waved his hand and broke through space. He slapped them across the face, causing them to roll on the ground for more than 10 laps before they got up. "How far have you run? When you are fighting with your enemies and your energy is exhausted, your last chance of survival is to rely on your physical body to escape. You have to be fast and last a long time. If you can't even keep your life, how can you become an expert?" Yi Qinghan coldly reprimanded. Qian Shuizhong's breathing quickened. His physical body wasn't in good condition. After running for so long with his immortal spiritual energy suppressed, he was already dog-tired. However, after hearing Yi Qinghan's words, he realized that the physical body was actually very important. It wasn't what he thought. Hua hua hua, hu! Yi Qinghan's words ignited everyone's fighting spirit. Even the little kids began to run with all their might. They were getting faster and faster. This was the time to test their willpower. 300 laps was equivalent to a few hundred li of running. After all, the training field was too big. Those little fellows whose cultivation hadn't reached the Sector Lord realm felt like their legs were filled with lead. They didn't even have the strength to lift their legs. However, Yi Qinghan followed them like a demon. He held a whip in his hand. Regardless of gender, age, or gender, he would hit anyone who fell behind. The field was filled with screams. Even Lu Zhenlong frowned. What kind of training was this? This was hellish training. This was just the beginning. When Yi Qinghan became serious, not many could withstand Yi Qinghan's training. 10,000 laps, Qian Xuezhong was almost desperate at this moment. Not to mention 1 day and 1 night, even 2 days and 2 nights might not be enough. After all, who could still run in the later stages? Yi Qinghan chased after them coldly. He did not give them a chance to rest. The leather whip pierced into their flesh and even into their souls. Of the 5,000 people, other than the ones at the front, half of the children at the back were beaten to tears. 500 laps, 600 laps. Qian Shuilong, Qian Lan, and the patriarch of the Qian clan, who were standing outside, couldn't bear it. After all, this kind of training method was too cruel. A distance of a few hundred kilometers wasn't too exaggerated, but if one didn't use the power of the immortal spirit and only relied on one's physical body, who could endure it? When they reached the 1,000th lap, Yi Qinghan asked all the children under the age of 18 to stay behind. Then, he asked Qian Lan to prepare the herbs for refining the golden body and put them in a wooden bucket. He boiled them with hot water to stimulate all the medicinal properties. Release the power of the immortal spirit to protect your physical body. Enter the bathtub and use all your strength to refine your physical body. Without my orders, you are not allowed to come out, Yi Qinghan said expressionlessly. No one dared to go against Yi Qinghan's will. If they were even slightly slower, they would be whipped. Hundreds of children were all grabbed into the bathtub. Apart from their heads, even their necks were submerged in the medicinal water. The physical body is the carrier that carries the soul. If the physical body isn't strong, it's like a knife without a blade. It's a blunt knife that can't even cut firewood. How can you kill people? How can you protect yourself? How can you defend yourself? Yi Qinghan walked in front of the group of children and coldly reprimanded them. Remember this well. This is just the beginning. If you want to become strong, you have to train hard. If you can't endure this hardship, you can apply to leave the group. I won't force you, Yi Qinghan said in a deep voice. The group of children gritted their teeth and trembled all over. However, after the strength of the physical body dried up, the absorption of medicinal power was the fastest. Although they were in pain, they could clearly feel that their strength was increasing by several times. Everyone's faces were flushed red. They took the initiative to mobilize their immortal spirit to absorb the medicinal power and refine their physical bodies. They pushed out the impurities in their bodies and condensed them step by step. Their physical bodies were also strengthened little by little. This was an improvement that could be felt. It was different from an illusory realm. To be able to see improvement, the group of children was naturally excited. They even forgot about the whip marks on their bodies. What a ruthless training! Could it be that he was trained like this? Qian Lan said to herself hoarsely. Qian Sihai saw another kind of training method. He felt that Yi Qinghan might really have the chance to create some experts for the Qian family. However, Lu Zhenlong disdained this kind of training method. He felt that as long as the physical body was strong enough, it was fine. The real battle still relied on combat skills and secret immortal technique. The physical body couldn't shatter the stars and split the sky and earth. Time passed. The screams in the square didn't dissipate. Instead, there were more and more because everyone was on the verge of collapse. After 1,500 laps, Yi Qinghan left behind another 2,000 young children with cultivation levels below the sage realm. There were more and more bathtubs, and more medicinal herbs were consumed. Although these medicinal herbs were very low-grade, they still cost 30,000 to 50,000 celestial coins a day. It wasn't something an ordinary family could afford. I've had enough. How is this cultivation? I want to change teams. Some of the children who thought they were cultivation geniuses couldn't take it anymore. They stopped and roared. When one of them shouted, there would naturally be a second, a third, and even 100 others. Some of the half-baked people who didn't have strong willpower but had decent talent glared angrily at Yi Qinghan and expressed their dissatisfaction. There were about 300 of them. Yi Qinghan smiled and replied directly, "Change teams. No problem. However, you will be eliminated." Then, Yi Qinghan crossed off this group of people from the list and formed a new team. The remaining people were still running. When the sky turned dark, this group of youths had actually completed 5,000 laps. It was somewhat unexpected. However, another large group of youths chose to be eliminated. In just one day, nearly 1,200 people had been eliminated. To Yi Qinghan, he only wanted elite. Those who could see the end, even if there were 3 to 5 of them, would be considered successful. These people had limitless potential and limitless futures. The weakest could reach the sky mortal realm, and the strongest could reach the mystic immortal realm. Those youths who were eliminated also entered the bathtub. However, after entering the bathtub and absorbing the medicinal essence, they realized that their physical strength was rapidly increasing. They felt some regret, but on careful thought, they felt that no matter how strong their physical bodies became, they would not be able to create a new world and become sky immortals. Therefore, they happily gave up. In the square, Lu Zhenlong's team was already resting. However, Yi Qinghan's team still had more than 300 people running. Qian Xuezhong was among them. Yi Qinghan was already very satisfied, but he wanted to see what the limits of these 300 people were. Perhaps they could really complete 10,000 laps. Night fell and starlight scattered. Some people could not endure their willpower and began to fall behind. No matter how they were whipped, they could not continue running. Yi Qinghan knew that their willpower had been exhausted, so he sent them to new bathtubs. An hour later, there were less than 20 people left in the square. Qian Xuezhong was among them. Yi Qinghan was increasingly satisfied. Qian Xuezhong glanced at Yi Qinghan's face from the corner of his eye. When he saw that faint smile, he was immediately energized and increased his speed. Chapter 23:33. Out of more than 5,000 people, 1,200 people were eliminated in one day. Yi Qinghan was given the great title of demon by the younger generation of the Qian clan. Regardless of gender, age, or gender, they all trembled when they saw Yi Qinghan. Everyone was whipped several times. Until the second half of the night, there were only 13 people who could still move in the square. They were basically walking now, not running. Qian Xuezhong, the 5 captains, and the 8 company captains were too tired to get up. They were directly thrown into the bathtub by Yi Qinghan. Yi Qinghan retreated outside the square. At this moment, Lu Zhenlong and Qian Shuilong had already left. Only Qian Sihai and Qian Lan were still watching from the outside. They wanted to see the results of the hellish training on the first day. Yi Qinghan looked at the two and said in a low voice, 5,000 people, I will eliminate until only 500 people are left in a month. I want elites, the survival of the fittest. Within a year, there will be at most 100 people left. Within 100 years, there will only be 10. However, I guarantee that the elites will all become immortal heaven immortals. However, I can't guarantee that there will be a mystic immortal realm expert. His. Qian Lan and Qian Sihai gasped. It was a little scary. There were more than 5,000 people, but there were only a few left. However, don't worry. The immortal heaven immortals who can last until the end are definitely invincible kings who can fight across realms. As long as you have a mystic immortal realm defensive armor and a mystic immortal realm weapon, it's not impossible to fight against a mystic immortal. Yi Qinghan threw out a temptation and said, "It's fine as long as you have enough resources. If you don't, there's nothing I can do." Qian Sihai hoped that a true expert would appear in the Qian clan, an expert comparable to a mystic immortal realm expert. For such an expert to appear, he was willing to pay any amount of resources. Fellow Taoist Yi, don't worry. So long as you need it, feel free to tell me. As for the mysterious immortal grade soul defensive immortal artifact you want, I'll have to see the results 10 years from now. So long as you're able to defeat Brother Liu, I'll consider it. Qian Sihai tossed out a temptation as well, as he was afraid Yi Qinghan would give up halfway. Yi Qinghan nodded. He looked at the group of children who were still soaking in the bathtubs and said, "Sixth Brother Qian, you don't have to prepare so many bathtubs tomorrow. Prepare about 3,500 of them. Put more medicinal herbs in each of the tubs and make sure they are of a higher grade. The prescription is still the same." Qian Lan nodded excitedly. He understood the prescription and even discussed it with the alchemist. The prescription was definitely very good. It was the culmination of countless years of body tempering. It was priceless. In addition, prepare 15 more high-grade medicinal tubs for the people who persevere until the end. They are all promising talents. Yi Qinghan pointed at the 13 people who were still running. At this moment, they had already rushed close to 8,000 lap. Qian Shuizhong encountered several bottlenecks and almost couldn't hold on. However, Yi Qinghan forced him to break through the shackles. He suffered the most today, but he gritted his teeth and persevered. If he hadn't seen Yi Qinghan's strength, he might have even chosen to be eliminated. Until dawn, there were actually 10 people who had completed 10,000 lap. Although the remaining 3 didn't complete it, they were still crawling forward. Their willpower was definitely not bad. They were all senior captains and company captains. Naturally, they wanted to establish their might and let their team members see their strength. They wanted them to have the qualifications to become a company captain or even a senior captain. The 13 people were competing and competing. They hoped to successfully enter Yi Qinghan's eyes and become the person that Yi Qinghan appreciated. It had to be said that these 13 people weren't bad, especially in terms of wisdom and foresight. They believed in Yi Qinghan. They also believed that, if they continued to cultivate like this, they would be like Yi Qinghan. Yi Qinghan didn't have a physical body, but his combat strength was already so exaggerated. If they had a physical body, they would definitely surpass him. Yi Qinghan's team of 4,000 people was still standing at the edge of the martial cultivation field. They watched the 13 people running and crawling on the ground. A portion of them were scared witless, but a portion of them actually regained their fighting spirit. They chose to rush onto the martial cultivation field and began to run wildly. Qian Lan had prepared 13 high-grade medicinal tubs for these 13 people. In the end, the 3 of them managed to crawl to the finish line. It could be considered a very happy ending. However, Yi Qinghan did not smile at them. He didn't even acknowledge them. Tempering your body in the medicinal tub is only the beginning of Cui Lian's physical body. If you think that you're amazing after completing today's small task, I advise you to take the initiative and ask to be eliminated. Yi Qinghan poured a bucket of cold water on them. The 13 people who had persevered immediately felt their hearts sink. Seeing that the group of youths were in a bad mood, Yi Qinghan's attitude softened. They were children after all. A big stick and a piece of candy would have the best effect. Therefore, his voice softened and he said with a smile, "However, your performance today has indeed exceeded my expectations. I thought that the children of rich and powerful families were a bunch of mischievous people who couldn't be trained. You have made my eyes light up. My expectations of you might have been higher." Qian Shuizhong and the others immediately grinned. If Yi Qinghan had said this before, the effect would definitely not have been as good. Now that they had received his acknowledgement, they were especially happy and excited. Yi Qinghan looked at the tired faces of the group of youths. He looked up at the morning glow in the sky and roughly calculated the time. He said, "I'll give you 6 hours to go home, eat and rest. Report back here after 6 hours. Those who are late will be punished with 3,000 lap." After saying this, Yi Qinghan directly left the training field and returned to the library, leaving behind a group of dumbfounded children. While on the spot, a little girl started crying. She said to the slightly older boy, "Big brother, let me be eliminated. My body hurts so much," sob, sob, sob. When one person cried, it led to hundreds of people crying. Most of the underage children cried, but the older children knew how to comfort them. They hoped that their team would become stronger as a whole. At this time, the squad leaders and company leaders played a key role. They ran back and forth, constantly comforting these poor children like nannies. Qian Lan and Qian Sihai looked at each other and smiled, then left. Not long after, the children went home. The company leaders and squad leaders held a new list of team members. They wanted to cry, but no tears came out. The group of company leaders said to the squad leaders, "Gather in 4 hours. Bring your team members to the training field. If anyone dares to fall behind, don't blame me for being rude." Yes. The squad leaders could only obey. One by one, they drooped their heads and left the training field. With this group of squad leaders and company leaders, it saved Yi Qinghan a lot of trouble. Yi Qinghan entered the library and continued to flip through ancient books. He was not interested in immortal techniques at all. Qian Sihai saw all of this. Qian Sihai looked at Yi Qinghan from the shadows. He was somewhat baffled. He felt that Yi Qinghan was a little crazy. He ran into the library and did not cultivate high-grade immortal technique. Instead, he chose to read ancient books. Was this something a cultivator should do? Is he looking for some historical documents? Qian Sihai wondered to himself. However, he did not go forward to ask, in case Yi Qinghan became unhappy. 4 hours passed in the blink of an eye. There were only 400 captains left in Yi Qinghan's team. They went from house to look for their team members and forcefully pulled them out of bed. Some were unwilling to leave and were even dragged away. The Qian clan's tribe was bustling with noise and excitement. The adults could only laugh bitterly. "Eliminate me! I can't take it anymore!" War cries and shouts resounded in every corner of the Qian family. It would have been better if the group did not rest. However, once they rested, their willpower collapsed. 4 hours had changed the fate of hundreds of people. Many people chose to be eliminated. However, they were still dragged to the training field. Even if they were eliminated, they had to wait for Yi Qinghan to arrive. 6 hours later. Yi Qinghan closed an ancient book and sighed. He expressed the helplessness and bitterness in his heart. Chapter 2334. Inside the library, Yi Qinghan closed the ancient book helplessly. The Qian family's foundation was far inferior to the Eastern imperial families. The Qian family did not have any records of the Eastern imperial family's collection. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan turned around and went down the library. Qian Sihai was waiting outside the door. The two met at the door. Qian Sihai asked curiously, "Daoist Yi, I wonder what historical records are you searching for? Maybe this old man knows." Yi Qinghan looked at Qian Sihai. He knew that Qian Sihai was paying attention to him. Yi Qinghan did not hide anything and said indifferently, "Naturally, I'm looking for a way to reconstruct the golden body. I heard that there was a heaven immortal expert in history who almost succeeded in reconstructing the golden body. I wonder if Patriarch Qian knows about it?" Qian Sihai's foundation was limited. He knew nothing about these things. At this moment, he could only shake his head and smile bitterly. Yi Qinghan was not disappointed. After all, this kind of thing could only be found by chance. The two left the library side by side. It was almost noon. On the training field, Yi Qinghan's team had at least 800 people who chose to be eliminated. They stood to the side, waiting for Yi Qinghan's arrival. The others were beginning to temper their bodies under the leadership of the team leader. However, there was one person missing from the training field. It was Lu Zhenlong. Lu Zhenlong's team was led by Qian Shuilong. They were training vigorously. Yi Qinghan and Qian Sihai arrived at the training field. They saw that the two teams were training hard, cultivating secret techniques, and tempering their bodies. However, when they saw the 800 people standing to the side dispiritedly, their eyes were filled with disappointment. There's no need to nurture people who don't have willpower. With a wave of his hand, Yi Qinghan erased the name list of this group of people. In an instant, there were only 3,200 people left in his group. At this rate, it would take at most 10 days for all of them to be eliminated. Qian Sihai also agreed with Yi Qinghan. This group of people had been eliminated, so they did not have the right to enjoy any more resources. Yi Qinghan gathered his own team and arranged for them to fight against each other. The winning team would receive extra points and double the resources, while the losing team would be punished with 3,000 lap. However, if the person being chased could escape the pursuit of the opposing team, they would receive 3 times the resources. Many people did not understand Yi Qinghan's thoughts, but only Yi Qinghan himself knew that nothing was more important than his life. Being able to escape was also a form of combat strength. Fights between people of the same level, squads against squads, and squadrons against squadrons. These were all real battles, and there was even the possibility of death. No one dared to be careless. This kind of perverted cultivation method was more than just hell mode cultivation. Many people were afraid of it, but they had no other choice. Yi Qinghan stood in the distance and watched the fights between the squads. He was also very careful. He was only an instructor, so he did not want to kill children because of training. The training field was divided into different areas. In the early stages, everyone was fighting hard. Blood dyed the training field red, and screams were endless. Even Qian Sihai frowned. This kind of training method was too cruel. Yi Qinghan pointed at the group of children who were fighting hard and said indifferently, "The ultimate goal of all cultivation methods is to protect one's life in battle. Actual combat experience is the most important. Those who have been on the battlefield and those who have not are completely incomparable. Those who have not been on the battlefield, even if they have a higher realm, will only be slaughtered when faced with people who frequently kill. This is training assassins." Qian Sihai smiled bitterly. Yi Qinghan smiled and shook his head. "Training assassins is much crueler than this. The reason why your Qian clan has not produced an expert for so many years is not because they are not talented, nor is it because your immortal techniques are too weak. It is because the instructor is too gentle. Alright, don't use people you don't trust. I believe in Taoist Yi," Qian Sihai said helplessly. The group of youths led by Qian Shuilong was dumbfounded. They did not expect Yi Qinghan to really let the Qian clan's disciples engage in a bloody battle. Moreover, people could die at any time. Kill. For the resources. Each squad leader took the lead, and people fell one after another, losing their ability to fight. However, Yi Qinghan strictly forbade killing those who had lost their ability to fight. If they really reached a point where they could not resist, they would be forcibly taken away by Yi Qinghan and completely eliminated. They were looking for experience and opportunities in the battle. Everyone was full of fighting spirit and killing intent filled the air. Even Qian Shuilong, who was in the other squad, was frightened by the killing intent of this group of children. Some squads were completely annihilated, while some squads still had one or two survivors. They no longer fought hard, but waited for an opportunity to attack while escaping. There would always be dark horses that stood out. Yi Qinghan took note of all the little fellows that stood out and prepared to nurture them. Qian Sihai left, leaving only Yi Qinghan to train these little fellows in the martial cultivation field. The 5 squad leaders suppressed their cultivation levels and fought Qian Shuizhong at the Immortal Spirit Immortal Realm. Qian Shuizhong was almost killed several times. He was stabbed several times and bathed in a river of blood, but Yi Qinghan did not stop. If you 5 squad leaders can't defeat him in 5 minutes, your entire squad will be implicated by you, Yi Qinghan said coldly. The 5 squad leaders attacked mercilessly, forcing Qian Shuizhong to flee frantically in the martial cultivation field. The scene was shocking, and Qian Shuizhong did not doubt that these 5 people could really kill him. Under the threat of death, Qian Shuizhong's speed reached the limit, but his physical strength could not keep up. Only then did he realize the importance of his physical body. Swoosh, swoosh. Boom. Qian Shuizhong twisted and turned in the obstacles and climbed up. His legs were almost broken by the long rod, and his soul was struck several times. He was almost killed. Yi Qinghan stared coldly at the battlefield. He controlled the entire martial cultivation field, and every battle was under his watch. In less than 5 minutes, Qian Shuizhong was defeated. He was beaten the most miserably, and his flesh was badly mangled. The 5 squad leaders looked apologetic. Yi Qinghan sneered and said, "There's no need to apologize, because everyone will take turns fighting. Tomorrow, one of you will be selected and killed by the other 5. The time limit will still be 5 minutes. Hiss, hiss. The 5 squad leaders took a deep breath, and there was fear in their eyes. Today's training will end here. Think about what you have learned from today's battle, and where your weaknesses are. 5 against 1, do you still need that much time? Your weaknesses are too obvious. Find them and change them." Yi Qinghan said calmly. Another 500 out of 3,200 people were eliminated, leaving only 2,700 people. After 2 days and 1 night, more than half of them were eliminated. But at this time, Yi Qinghan's team felt that they had improved. Under the threat of death, they could always discover their potential and find their own weaknesses. Gather. Qian Shuizhong was covered in blood, but he was not afraid. He was even a little excited and reached out to gather the team. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The 2,700 people quickly gathered and looked at Yi Qinghan expectantly, waiting for his reprimand. However, Yi Qinghan did not lecture them. He just said lightly, "The resources have been sent to your homes. This time, go back and refine your bodies. Then, think about today's battle. If you were to fight again, would you be able to do better? Would you be able to turn defeat into victory?" "Yes, instructor." Everyone bowed and said. After the baptism of blood, this group of children seemed to have grown a lot. Yi Qinghan turned around and was about to leave. Suddenly, he saw Qian Sihai rushing to the martial cultivation field in a panic with a look of horror and fear. He knew something was wrong and quickly went up to him and asked, "Why is the former patriarch so flustered?" "Instructor Liu is dead. He died miserably," Qian Sihai said in a trembling voice. Yi Qinghan frowned. How could an advanced immortal immortal die so easily? If he really died miserably, it must have been a hard battle. How could he not feel it? You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.